Calling to order the Monday, December 3rd, 2018 regular meeting of the 37th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Here.
Councilmember Dean.
Here.
Councilmember Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here.
Councilmember Stedman.
Here.
And Mayor Turbrack.
Here. Our first order of business is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion to approve.
Take your pick. Motion approved by Councilmember Dean with support from Councilmember Hennon. Are there any additions, changes, corrections? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. The agenda has been approved. Please stand now for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge. With us today is Reverend Tal Sullivan.
Let's pray. Almighty God, we begin this council meeting tonight by inviting you to preside over it and over our city. As the one who knows what is best, we ask you to give us direction and wisdom. I pray this for each of Berkeley's leaders and public servants, that they would not only be blessed with knowledge and understanding in the many areas where they must lead, but they would be guided by you in the ways that are best. Please bless our leaders in all the arenas of their lives and give them the strength and health they need. Please also bless the residents and business owners in our city as we move through this month, which is full of celebration for so many, with yesterday's start of both Hanukkah and Advent, two celebrations which turn our attention to you and your provision. Help us to be aware of and grateful for your love and involvement in our lives, and to be inspired to generously share that with those around us, especially those for whom this is a difficult season. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have reached the citizens' comments portion of our evening, where you may present your thoughts on issues that are not included on tonight's agenda. Council members will not engage you in discussion, but if your concern needs to be addressed by a member of city staff or department of the city, please sign your name on the sheet provided on the clerk's table. You may speak on a specific agenda item while it is being considered, and when you come to the microphone, I ask that you please state your name and city of residence.
Natalie Price, Berkeley. Today, the Moms Club of Berkeley kicked off our annual diaper drive for Judson Center. The diaper drive benefits all of the programs under the Child and Family Services program. And as soon as we start to make our deliveries to Judson Center on Friday, the caseworkers will come in and get the diapers out to the families in need. Moms Club is grateful for our community partners who provide drop-off locations for the drive. Big thanks to Berkeley Public Safety, Berkeley Public Library, Berkeley City Hall, Berkeley Community Center, Berkeley Public Works, Berkeley First, Backyard Playroom, and a small business, Annabelle's Couture, for collecting diapers for us. We'll be collecting diapers at these locations through December 21st. All sizes are needed, including pull-ups and adult diapers, and open or partial packs are great. In the past 2 years, we've collected over 20,000 diapers for Judson Center as a community. Our goal this year is to add another 10,000 diapers to the clients that Judson Center serves. So thank you, Berkeley, for your generosity. Thanks for helping us do this drive.
Thank you, Natalie.
Hi, Greg Cloutier, Berkeley. I'm here today to discuss mine. Albert Sanum, Rick Murray of Murray Built here with me. my son Dustin. We own carpentry companies. We are 35 to 50-year residents of the city of Berkeley, and we have come to express our extreme dismay at the letting go of Dwayne Franks, the building inspector. Okay? You guys had the Tom Brady of building inspectors here. We've known him for 25 years. The guy has been nothing but to the letter of the law, full of integrity. He's made the building department go from a fiasco that it was in the 80s to now a citizen can walk in. There's a presentation there for him. There's a letter of the code book of the commonly asked questions. Anything that anybody wants and needs. This guy never let a thing slide in this city. Okay? The city is the way it is right now. He turned his building department into a gem. All right? With the help of Kim and the girls that are there now, and of course Renee before. All right? I've been doing this for 25 years. This is my business. This is my residence, and I'm very, very, very concerned. This is unacceptable. I don't know how this came about. I haven't been to a meeting in a few years, and I apologize for that, but we heard nothing about this. There was no scuttlebutt, and all of a sudden, boom. I talked to Dwayne. He said he's been here 25 years. He was released within a week. Now, there's several citizens groups out here that are out on a witch hunt. Okay, if we need to change the ordinances as far as the Bigfoot houses, if that's what's bothering everybody, all a building inspector can do is follow the rules he's given. Okay? So I would like to see this brought up on a future, put it on the agenda for a future meeting, and I would like to see this guy retained by McKenna, you know, which you know, I spoke with the city manager, Matt, the other day, and you know, evidently they were supposed to keep all of our people on staff. I mean, there's 100 building departments that would like to have this guy. Dwayne Franks and Glenn Bartoni, who's now in Shelby, over the 30 years I've been in this business, are the two most reputable, two smartest, only guys that would ask, what's holding this up, what's holding that up, you know what I mean? Look at a building all the way down to the basement and everything. I don't think anyone here has that kind of experience, all right? We're talking about people in the room that have done this through several generations of their families. We have hundreds of years of experience, okay? And this guy's the best there was, all right? So we need to think about this, and we're standing here saying we need to do something about it, and we would like him brought back into the fold with McKenna. All right?
Thank you, Craig. No? Anybody else? Going once? Twice.
I'm sorry, I'm outside, and I didn't necessarily know if there's an opportunity to speak.
Citizens' comments? Yeah? Microphone, please. Name, city of residence.
Thank you. David Oliver, I'm a citizen of Berkeley and owner of Oliver Construction. I'm here on behalf of Dwayne Franks as well. I want to echo the sentiments that Greg just put forth. Dwayne's been an inspector who has helped this city run like a Swiss timepiece in the last 25 years. I built my first home here in 1991, and I've built over 150 homes since, 90 since the year 2000 to be exact. And he is a guy that was always honest and fair and gave us respect as individuals and citizens of the city. And I think it's very unfortunate that he was let go after a 25-year tenure here very quickly. And I can't say that anyone ever asked or spoke to me, despite the fact that maybe I've pulled more permits in this town than anybody in the last 25 years. I really do miss the fact that he won't be here, and I think the city, it will be difficult to tell, but I think in time the city will miss him. And what we've given up, I think will cost us way more than what we might save by using one of the services that's been hired in. And that's just my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay. Any last comments before we move on? Seeing none, we'll move on to our regular order of business today and our consent agenda. Ms. Boucher, would you please read the items on tonight's consent agenda?
Approval of the minutes, matter of approving the minutes of the 37th City Council meeting on Monday, November 16, 2018, work session, and Monday, November 19, 2018. Resolution number R3618, matter of recognizing Josephine Brewer for her many contributions to the City of Berkeley. And resolution number R3718, matter of recognizing the outgoing Berkeley Chamber of Commerce President, Patrick Calhoun.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Support. Motion approved by Councilmember Blanchard with support from Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Stedman,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
and Turbrack.
Yes. Tonight's consent agenda has been approved. Now move on to our regular agenda. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 1 on our regular agenda?
Recognitions, presentations, matter of any recognitions or presentations from the consent agenda.
First up, we have Resolution R3618, recognizing Josephine Brewer, and I will be reading that myself. Josephine, you want to come up to the microphone there, please? A resolution of the Council of the City of Berkeley, Michigan, recognizing Josephine Brewer for her many contributions to the City of Berkeley. Whereas Josephine Brewer moved to Berkeley in 1967, and with her husband Toby, where they raised their 3 children. And whereas Miss Brewer's children attended Berkeley schools, where she served as PTA president at Pattengill Elementary School, Anderson Middle School, and Berkeley High School. She was also part of the committee to transform Anderson from a junior high to a middle school. And whereas Miss Brewer worked in the special education department in the Berkeley School District for nearly a decade, and eventually worked in the corporate cash division at Beaumont Hospital, where she retired. And whereas during the 51 years that Miss Brewer lived in the city of Berkeley, she was a member of a number of committees and boards that have helped shape our community. Miss Brewer was on the City Manager Search Committee that commenced in 2000. She was a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee commissioned in the late 2016 to provide feedback and insight to the City Council on future millage and bond decisions in Berkeley. And from 2007 to 2018, she served on the city's Recreation Advisory Board. And whereas a valued member of the Recreation Advisory Board, Ms. Brewer provided guidance and support to the department for over a decade. She was recognized for this service with a Community Service Award from the Michigan Recreation and Park Association in 2017. And whereas Ms. Brewer was recognized for her service to the City of Berkeley in 2014 when she received the Citizen of the Year Award from the Berkeley Days Committee. And whereas Josephine Brewer has been a fixture at city meetings and events throughout the last several decades, her presence as a devoted citizen of the city will be greatly missed at every city council meeting, rec advisory board meeting, and more as she moves from Berkeley. And whereas Ms. Brewer visited the Public Safety Department and other departments every month and always brought her baked goods, a smile, and a warm spirit. Now, therefore, the City of Berkeley resolves, Section 1, that the Council of the City of Berkeley recognizes the extraordinary service that Josephine has given the city for the past 5 decades. In Section 2, that the Council of the City of Berkeley is grateful to Josephine for exhibiting and embodying the City of Berkeley's motto, "We care." The city, in turn, would like Josephine to know that we care as well about you and will always welcome you back here with open arms. Introduced and passed at a regular City Council meeting on Monday, December 3rd, 2018, signed by me, and instead of us standing here and shaking Josephine's hand, since she is the resident hugger of the city of Berkeley, we're going to head on down there and give her a hug on our way out. Go around. Yep. That's awesome.
Yes. Well, I am totally overwhelmed, and Dennis brought me a turkey. In my yard, I have a turkey I've had her since July the 31st. It's a wild turkey, and she just took residence in my yard, and it's been there. So now I'll have a buddy for her. Thank you. I'm totally overwhelmed, with all the love everybody has shown me. And you know how I feel about Berkeley and all of its residents, and appreciate all of the employees. And it's true that we do care. We care about each other. And that's what I would like to encourage all of us to do in the city, is to try to get along with each other and care for each other. And it's becoming, the season of Christmas, and think about letting Christmas feelings last more than just through this season. And our motto is we care, and we really do care. When people get in trouble, we help out, and we have wonderful city services, wonderful mayor and city manager and council, and just work together and make our city better and better. And I'm happy that if I did contribute a little bit. Thank you.
More than a little bit,
More than a
Josephine.
little bit.
Anybody have any additional comments before we move on? Sure. Nope, sorry. The folks at home got to be able to hear you.
Okay, well, I would just like to say that in addition to how terrific you are with your civic duty, Joe has been the most wonderful neighbor that anyone could ask for. And even though my mom and sister lived on Greenfield and Joe lived on Elwood, so we weren't next door neighbors, she might have been that. And when my mother had her stroke and she pushed her wheelchair around the block, that's how she became friends with Joe. And knowing Joe, you know what happened next? She had a seat ready for my mother. She'd have an ashtray, because sadly she still smoked even after her stroke, my mother did, ready for my mom to take a rest on her walk around the block. And Joe's become like family, and we treasure her so much.
Okay, if you were not aware, we had a very special treat this past Saturday as well. Josephine was able to, despite the weather, take a ride in the parade on Saturday in our Holiday Lights Parade. She got to ride that. It was great to have her there. It was a tremendous opportunity for her, and she was also recognized by Denise and the juniors as well. So, Josephine, don't go far. We know. I appreciate you just gave all of us your address, so we know where to find you now. So the next time that we need, next time we have a committee in the city, okay? All right, thank you. We'll move on to some more recognition. I've asked Councilmember Blanchard to read R 3718, please. Patrick, come on up.
I briefed you on that. A resolution of the Council of the City of Berkeley, Michigan recognizes the outgoing Berkeley Chamber of Commerce President, Patrick Calhoun. Whereas Patrick Calhoun was first became involved with the Berkeley Chamber of Commerce in 2012 as a staff member of SHW Group and later Stantec. And whereas Patrick's strong contribution and desire to support Berkeley businesses quickly led to an invitation to join the board of the Chamber of Commerce, which he did in 2013. And whereas after 3 years on the Chamber Board, Patrick was selected by his peers to lead the Chamber of Commerce as its president in 2016. And whereas in his role as the Chamber President, Patrick has represented the Chamber of Commerce at countless ribbon cuttings, grand openings, and also serves on the Chamber Finance Committee and the Membership Committee. And whereas during his tenure as president, the Chamber of Commerce Board launched the Explore Berkley gift certificates, and Patrick hosted the kickoff event. And whereas Patrick is very involved volunteering at chamber events such as the Art Bash, Berkeley Street Art Fest, Cruise Fest, Pub Crawl, Chamber Networking Chats and Blenders, State of the Cities, and packing welcome packets. And whereas during his tenure as Chamber President, Patrick helped initiate the board's focus on a strategic plan and revised mission statement while remaining focused on helping local businesses grow and prosper. And now, the City of Berkeley resolves, Section 1, that the Council of the City of Berkeley recognizes the extraordinary service that Patrick Calhoun has given to the Chamber of Commerce and the City of Berkeley. Introduced and passed at a regular City Council meeting Monday, December 3rd, 2018. Daniel J. Turbrick, Mayor. Now, we're not going to give you a hug, by the way.
Yeah, no hug line for you. Sorry, Patrick. You're gonna have to come up here and go the old-fashioned way.
We'll do the handshake thing, but no hugs tonight.
Congratulations, thank you.
Thanks for all your service.
Thanks, Patrick. Here's your certificate.
Congratulations.
So I feel like I should at least state my name and city of residence. Patrick Calhoun. In the evenings, I'm a resident of Huntington Woods. But as my wife will attest, most of the hours I actually spend here in Berkeley, where I've worked for the last 16 years, which gives me the opportunity to actually say I have two favorite cities. And without a doubt, the city of Berkeley is our downtown. We love this community. We love the fact that, unlike so many other communities that have struggled with maintaining that real sense of businesses that mean something to the locals, somehow magically Berkeley has been able to pull this off. It is a wonderful place to shop. It is a wonderful place to spend time. It's a wonderful place to volunteer, and we're always looking for more volunteers. And it's a wonderful place to raise kids. I've been touched to have been able to participate in so many different things, both as an individual but also as a member of the company I work for, Stantec. I look forward to many, many more years of being part of this community, staying involved with the chamber, and enjoying the fact that I can do 99% of what I need to do without driving more than 2 miles in any direction. So thank you for being a fantastic, caring hometown for so many people.
Thank you, Patrick. And don't be shy. If we're looking for volunteers again, we know where you live. You're real close. All right. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 2 on tonight's agenda?
Presentations, matter receiving a report from Miss Marilyn Couples and her neighbors.
Hi,
Couples?
I'm Marilyn Couples. I live on Oakshire in Berkeley. I've lived in my home for 37 years and have been a resident of Berkeley for over 60. What I'm here to talk about tonight, along with my neighbors, is an issue that we've been plagued with all summer long. Behind me at 1951 Royal, they put a new build on a lot that previously only had a garage on it. And although we've had progress in the last week, Matt called me today and seems like things are going in the right direction. We really feel like we need to go on record and let you know what we've gone through for the last 2 months. And actually, it's been longer than 2 months, but it's been 2 months that we've come together as a group to try to work on this. On October 1st, I called Eli Construction, left my name, address, and told them about my problem. I didn't get any response. On October 2nd, I left the same message. On October 3rd, I actually spoke to Eli, And he told me he'd graded the yard the way Dwayne had told him to. We'd watched them take the dirt out of that basement and grade it over 2 lots. We're going to be showing you pictures of this, and what this property was a house on the south end of the lot, and on the north end was a garage. And what they ended up doing is moving that old garage over behind the old house and then built this new structure. So I walked out of my backyard on October 1st, and my backyard was flooded 5 inches of water 6 feet into my yard. And I looked around, my neighbor next to me had the same problem. While I was talking to my one neighbor, a neighbor 2 doors down came over because he heard us talking. On October 3rd, I spoke to Kelly, Todd, Kevin, and Rebecca. Everyone had the same problem. We'd never had this before. I've lived in this house 37 years. I emailed Dwayne Franks, and I CC'd Mayor Dan Turbrick, sending him pictures of my property and asking for a response from the city. As I found out Friday, Dan never got the CC from the email. The next day, October 4th, Dwayne did a slow roll past my house. My husband noticed it. The next door neighbors thought it was so odd, they were ready to call the police. But I did receive an email from Dwayne on that day saying, give me a call. I knew his office hours were from 8:30 to 9:30. So on October 5th, I spoke to Dwayne, and he recalled that he'd been at my house in the summer because I put in a new pool. I told him he should have stopped by when he drove past my house. He told me at that time that Eli had told him 2 weeks prior to that he was going to reestablish a drain that he had broken when he dug the basement for this new house. So that would have been the week of September 17th that Dwayne said Eli was going to reestablish the drain. On October 9th, I introduced myself to Eli because he was in the backyard of the house. I asked him if there was any progress on our problem, and he said he was going to put a trench in on the north side of his property, and that was going to solve the problem. And then I spoke to him about there's other problems. We have 13 inches of increased elevation that you spread out across all these backyards. He just shook his head, no comment, walked away. On October 17th, Kevin Brooks and I met with the city manager, Matt. Within a few minutes of the presentation, Matt said, wow, it looks like this drain needs to be reconnected. So Kevin and I left that meeting feeling very hopeful that something was going to be done. Matt was going out of town for 5 days, and he said, I don't want to let this sit for 5 days, so I'm going to give it to Tim McLean. I said, who's Tim McLean? And he said, that's Dwayne's boss. And I said, you know, that's really odd, because my husband called up there last week and asked to speak to Dwayne's boss, and the woman on the phone said, you have to speak with Dwayne. So I hope they've straightened that out, that they actually know that Tim McLean is in charge of that department now. So that was on a Wednesday, October 17th. On October 19th, I emailed Tim, which was Friday, to see if there was any update. After no response, I thought on Saturday, I thought to myself, you know, he hasn't seen our presentation, so I'm going to email it to him. So on October 22nd, I received an email from Tim at the end of the day saying it was going to take him another day to the end of Tuesday to look at what we'd sent him to see if he could give me some information on it. And at first I was a bit confused because you can look at the information, the presentation that was put together within an hour at least, and I'm sure Matt had left him with some instructions. Tim gave me a couple days that I could meet with him, and I wrote back to him that I wasn't available on that day, but I could meet with him on another day. I never heard from him again. On October 26th, Todd spoke to Matt about his problem, about 13 inches of dirt being piled against his back fence. On November 1st, I spoke with Matt, and he said that Eli must reconnect the drain and the city would hold him to it. I was told that around November 5th, we'd start to see some action. Well, October 5th, or November 5th came, we didn't see anything. November 6th, I went in to speak with Deputy City Manager Darshell Love. And it just so happened that she was free to see me. When Todd had come in and spoken to Matt, Darshell came by, Miss Love came by, and he thought, boy, she has no idea what's going on here. She hasn't heard anything. And when I presented our presentation to Darshell, she had no idea what was going on Oakshire and Royal. So this was a whole month after all this started, and the city was notified. I had to wonder, do they have city meetings? Do you have administrative meetings where you get together once a week or once a month to talk about problems in the neighborhood? It didn't appear that they did. On November 15th, we're all trying to figure out what's the difference and why aren't we getting a response here? So I asked Brian, actually I came up here to look up tax information. They used to have a book on the counter, and they said it probably hasn't been there in 15, 20 years, but you used to be able to look up tax information by yourself. It wasn't there, so Brian had to look up the houses for me. On Oakshire, if you're all familiar, there are 16 Eli construction houses in the second block north of 11 Mile. I had him pull that tax information on those 16 houses and also the 16 houses on the east side of the street that are across the street from these houses. To us, it was starting to look like this was a real cash cow, and is that the reason the city wasn't doing anything with Eli Construction? The average tax bill on those 16 homes is $7,467. The average tax bill on the streets, on the houses across the street, is $3,025. There's a difference of $4,441. So these houses are bringing up substantially more money to the city. I mean, we were reaching, we're trying to figure out why nothing's happening. On November 16th, I emailed Eileen Stedman and asked if we could meet. I told her what my neighborhood was going through. She returned my email within an hour. She gave me her cell phone number. And within an hour, we'd set up a meeting time. Now, Eileen and I both had to change our meeting time 3 times, but we persevered and we were able to meet. Eileen understood what we were going through, and she told us, you know, you really need to be on the regular agenda. You've done this for over a month. You've talked to all the people that we would have told you to talk to. And so thanks to Eileen, you know, we're here and we feel you need to know what's going on. On November 26th, I spoke to Matt, which was last Monday. I spoke to Matt. He happened to be on the road coming back from his break. And I asked him for us to be put on the regular agenda. So this is now, you know, it'll be 2 months this week that we've been going on with this and haven't seen anything happen in our neighborhood. Matt sent me an update that Tim, Keith Woodcock, and the DPW, Sean Young, met with Eli, and he's going to reestablish the drain. I think that's about the 3rd time I'd heard that in the last 2 months. He was going to temporarily put in a sump pump in the ground by November 29th. So far today, still nothing. Even though Matt called me today, and it does sound hopeful, that this new gentleman, Keith Woodcock, understands there's a problem in our neighborhood, you know, we still felt we needed to be here and be on the record, because each week that goes by, every rain that falls, our backyards flood. What we're going to do right now is, you know, I can't say enough about the people that we spoke to in the city. They all were concerned. They were empathetic, but still we have nothing 2 months later. And this wasn't just something that happened for 2 months. 2 months is when we got together as a group. Throughout the summer, on the 4th of July, at this location, Eli had 2 old men, and I'll call them old because I think they were older than me, although I'm the old one now, cutting the concrete to his new garage with no water, no eye protection, no mask, and all of this was flying in the air on the 4th of July. And you have to kind of wonder, are these really licensed contractors that would come in and work on the 4th of July, or who are these people? There's a bag of some information. I'm going to give you 3 packets because everyone's going to come up here and speak. This is a sample of what was found in my backyard, and also Kelly next door to me, after Detroit Edison, their subcontractor, hooked everything up to the pole, the electrical. They just throw all this stuff down on the ground. I have a dog. I have people walking barefoot in my backyard, and this is a sample of what we've gone through. But I'd like to pass this out to you right now, if that's possible.
Sure.
Some of you have seen these pictures before. And the first one that I want to draw your attention to, and this is what was found in my backyard. It's a packet that looks like this.
I think we're missing two. Sharon, here.
What this first packet shows you is the elevation of this property before all this started. These pictures were given to me by Jan, who grew up in this house. Her father's the one that sold this to Eli Construction. This is the back of the house. If you go next to it, this is the elevation going south. Hey, my boy. And as you can see, the yards are level. They go side by side. In fact, the owner of this house, his wife was big into gardening, and she got many awards in Berkley for her beautiful garden that went all around their double lot. The next picture is a picture looking west, and it shows the properties that back up to it. So I just want you to see that each of these properties, there's no raised elevation. It goes yard to yard. The next picture is looking north. That goes into Kevin McNulty's property. He's the one that is now north of the new build at 1951. These were all provided by Jan, who grew up in this house. The last one in this group looks from Jason, who just bought Willard's house. This looks at Todd's house, and you can see that there is light underneath his fence. This is how that elevation normally was. Now you can't see under his fence. There's 13 inches of dirt pushing against that fence. So what we're going to do now is each person in our group that's here is going to start speaking about the problems in their individual yard. I'll be speaking for Rebecca because she's sick tonight. And then we'll answer any of your questions. So the next one up is Jason. When I first met him, I told him, you know, you're really a lucky kid, young man. You bought the best house on the block. In 2014, when we all flooded and had 2 feet of water in our basement, his house did not have any water. You know, Willard, who built that house, and lived in it for 45, 50, no, it'd be longer than that, 70 years. If there was a problem, he took care of that house. So he was getting a really nice house. So Jason? Yep.
My name's Jason Krumka. I live at 1943 in Royal. If you'll go to this packet that I prepared, just to give you a little bit of an overview, image number 1 is the block of the 3 streets, Oakshire on the west, Cambridge to the north, and Royal along the east side there. And if you flip to image number 2, I've called out everyone's name and address for the affected properties. The yellow is where we believe the existing drain is, and it runs to the east and ties into the storm sewer along Royal Avenue there. I'm in the middle of the page, listed in blue. Eli Rashty is the one who I purchased the home from and is now building the new build to the north. So, on the next page, diagram 3. Marilyn gave you a little bit of an overview. They moved the garage to the back of my property, which is now in the southwest corner, poured a new driveway along the south end, and the white box with the red X is where they're currently building the new house. So when I purchased the home, it was with the intent that Eli would be developing the new house on the now vacant north half of the lot. And if you turn to page 4, part of our closing deal was that he would grade and sod the backyard as well as install the fence between the 2 lots. The picture shown there is from a listing photo, which I assume is early 2018, just prior to myself purchasing the house. And I'll take you through a little bit of a timeline briefly. The 27th on the next page, page 5, is where the excavation began on the vacant lot. And you can see on May 1st, the entire pit was complete. However, you can see it's a little hard because of the way it printed out, but that bottom left corner, you can see where it's already wet from the drain spilling out there. The next page is where we really were concerned. The May 12th rain event filled that foundation pit with several feet of water, with majority of it coming from the existing drain tile. You can see from the corner, there's a little bit of white where it's gushing out from that drain into the pit. I took a picture of my own backyard that same day. That is the bottom photo on page 6. This is prior to any grading being completed. You can see there's standing water there, but definitely not to any means of what I'm dealing with today. You'll see further what has now been constructed. If you turn to page 7, May 30th is the initial grading. It looked pretty nice. It was still pretty level, but we did notice that there was still quite a bit of soil on the back half of the new lot. On May 30th, the next photo, you can see where the walls have been poured. Some of that existing soil had already been pushed up to the outside of the foundation, and the existing drain that was ruptured has now been covered. Page 8 is a little bit of an enlargement from the previous photo. It shows the path of where that drain used to be, now has the basement egress window well. From the sounds of it, over the last day, there's a plan to go around that, but initially that was of a concern. Page 9 is where we get into the final grading, and we believe they've used the soil from the existing foundation and spread over the remainder of my lot. And then on July 9th is where Mr. Franks signed off on the garage. Now, I'm not sure if the inspection certification is just for the garage itself, but I do know based off the dates that he would have at least seen the grading. July 12th, on page 10, is where you'll see the sod was completed. I didn't think I had an issue. I was a pretty happy homeowner. It was looking great. However, less than 4 days later, on July 16th, you'll notice I now have several inches of standing water all across my back patio. To give you a frame of reference, from my exterior wall to the bottom corner of that page is 10 feet. And now during every rain event, it's like that to the point where I can't walk out my back door. And then just page 11 is another photo, and just to call the fact that it now, unless I pump the water out of that standing location, it does come through the brick into my basement. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Marilyn.
Rebecca's not here because she's sick, and she's the one that put together our whole presentation for us that we initially had. If you turn to the first page, the first day I met Rebecca, well, actually, this shows you the whole area that's affected by this flood. And then on to testimonial number 1. The first time I met Rebecca, the first day, Todd and I walked around the block to talk to her. And we said, "Are you getting any flooding?" And she goes, "Well, let me show you." And she showed us this picture. And we said, "Wow, you get the prize, if there's a prize for the absolutely worst yard." I mean, can you imagine? She's a new homeowner in our neighborhood. She just moved in this year. She has 2 children, and she has 2 dogs. This happens every single time it rains. She has a submersible pump that she has to put back there, which scares her to death. She's been up here. She's talked to Matt. She's talked to Dwayne. Dwayne actually told her that we thought that her yard was causing our problem. And we thought, yeah, that's not true. What's real important about her problem is not only does it cover her whole backyard, it goes into her garage. So she's got a 2-car garage there, and the water comes in from the north, and it also comes in from the south, which is where Arnold lives. So she's surrounded by it. So every time it rains, and today her backyard is still flooded. This is a new homeowner that just moved into our neighborhood. When Dwayne, I can't say enough. I worked with him, putting in my pool, challenging at times. He was on Jason's property, and he looked over to her flood one day, and she had no idea who he was. And he said to her, "You know what you have to do? You have to make a hole as big as a swimming pool and fill it with gravel, and that'll take care of your problem." And he said, "It'll cost you about $1,500 to $2,000. She's a single parent, and she's going to deal with this when she comes, moves into the neighborhood. I can guarantee that none of these homes, none of their backyards flooded. I've been there 37 years. If her home flooded like this, her yard, Frank, who lived there, would have had to tell her that, boy, this whole yard floods. It never happened. If you looked at the next page, you can see all different sides of her property. You can see where she is pumping the water out. Not being able to be here tonight, she said, I'm really tired of having to start this pump up. She's afraid she's going to get electrocuted. Her kids and dogs are not allowed out in the backyard. And this is what she's dealing with, a new homeowner to Berkley. The next page, testimonial 2, is mine. This is looking east out of my backyard. And this was on October 1st when I walked back there and saw all this water. It looks into Kevin McNulty's backyard. I spent a lot of money this summer replacing a pool that I'd had for 34 years. So there's new sand that was put in when this new pool was put in. You know, it's a brand-new pool. It hasn't settled yet. I have 6 feet into my yard, 5 inches of water, and it stays for several days. My concern is it's going to undermine my pool. You know, it's a big concern. Next up is going to be Kevin McNulty.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you very much for your time. I'm Kevin McNulty, 1975 Royal, Berkeley High, class of 1972. I've owned this house since 2006. Never had a problem. And in May, I'm the house immediately next door to the new construction. In May, the excavation had been dug for the new basement. We had quite a heavy rain, and that collapsed. So the builder brought in a bobcat, put it down in the hole, and they dug a much greater, larger excavation, which then exposed this drain tile and broke it. The builder was on site, and water was gushing out of that pipe. There's a picture of a 4-inch brown circular. That was the drain tile. Water's gushing out, and I said, Eli, you got to reconnect that. And he shrugged his shoulders. He also dug underneath my driveway. I don't know why, but I've been told my driveway will now crack because the foundation structural support for my driveway is gone. A guy driving down the street stopped and said, same thing happened to me, my driveway stopped. And now the cure that's going to come is some heavy equipment coming on my driveway to reconnect this drain. I told Eli many times, you got to reconnect the drain, but the last was in October, after it rained, and all these photos show all this flooding. I said, Eli, you got to reconnect this drain. He goes, I cannot dig. There's electric buried there. Wasn't there in May. You've already heard, this is Berkeley. You grow up in Berkeley. And years go by and your kids grow up in Berkeley. And if you're lucky, your grandkids grow up in Berkeley. And you only have to drive 2 miles to see everybody. Rite Aid bought the Berkeley Theater, where I had my first date. The marquee is still there. Vincetta Garage no longer fixes cars, but the facade is still there. That's respect. Respect for a community that was here before they moved here and will be here after they leave. This man has no respect for Berkeley. He's made no effort, no attempt to blend in. In fact, his dirt doesn't even blend in. He's got mountains in the back of this new house, and in every 19 of the houses he's built has raised grades, because he doesn't want to pay the money to remove the dirt. For 6 weeks, there was a pile of debris in front of this house, and the builder was on site, and I said, Eli, I see rats running in there. Not his problem. The sidewalk's been a mess. At Halloween, I was afraid children would trip and fall. I was afraid they'd walk in the street, get hit by a car. I put up some floodlights. I hope that helped. What he cares about is the biggest possible maximum size house to get the biggest possible highest price at the absolute lowest cost. Eli Construction has built 19 homes in Berkeley that have sold for more than $8 million. $8 million. Nobody comes to Berkeley to make $8 million and treat us like this. The new house has water connected, it has sewer connected, and I think it has a working bathroom. But the porta potty is still right out front. But UPS, FedEx, DTE, Consumers Power, AT&T, Tringali Sanitation, and the occasional homeless guy is quite glad that it's still there. And now with it getting colder, the smell is not quite as bad as it was. Now we get much property tax. From these 19 vacant lots, we're getting an additional $152,000 in property taxes. Not bad from a vacant lot. But question is, do we care more about the property tax than we do about the character and quality of Berkeley? Could these newer, bigger homes be a little skinnier, a little longer? Could they be rearranged differently? Outside my bedroom window, I now have a fireplace vent, a furnace vent, a clothes dryer vent, an egress window, a gas meter, and an electric meter out my bedroom window. All that could have been on the opposite side of the house. But the developer don't care. It's not his bedroom window. Berkeley, we care. If you don't shovel your snow, your neighbor probably will, because we care. But if we allow this to continue, we're going to lose that charm and character. We don't need to be taken advantage of like this. It's not just the problem of 8 flooded lots. It's the problem of uncontrolled development and the almighty dollar. Thank you.
Kelly's not here. She had a business appointment. She lives next door to me. If you turn to testimonial number 4. This is the back of Kelly's lot. She backs up right to this house. You know, mind you, all 3 of us, Todd, Kelly, and I, all have family rooms in the back of our house. You never used to worry about somebody looking in your back window, whatever. You have a clear view of this house in every one of our rooms. I mean, it's remarkable that this house was put on such a small lot. Kelly wanted you to know that, let me see if her next picture is here. It goes all the way up to her garage when it floods. Yeah, she lives behind the new build. Water level is above the garage threshold, and water's entering her garage also. So we've got 2 garages that could probably, you know, have a problem from this water undercutting it. The next person up is Arnold.
Hi, my name is Arnold Joe. I live at 1950 Royal. There's 3 houses south of this new building. First of all, I'd like to thank my neighbors for spending the many, many hours putting this presentation together, and probably even more hours meeting with the city officials in Eli, trying to correct a problem that should never have happened. I had my house built in 1975 and lived many years. Our backyard was always free of water. Since the new building was up, I get a gush of water that comes over from the north and Eli's new house that he built into my backyard. And I've got a tool sheds back there, and it comes up to that, flooding that. It just shouldn't have happened. Anyone that really was trying to build the quality houses within a quality neighborhood just was trying to cut too many corners all the way around. And look at the mess we have. We're asking help that we seem to be getting stalled time and time again. But if we can get some help, we sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, council members. My name is Kevin Brooks. I'm at 1991 Royal Avenue. I am 2 blocks north of the new construction. I've been at that property for about 14 years now, and I just like to echo a lot of the same sentiment. I've never had flooding in my property, and since that new construction started, it does flood at every rain event. Now, depending on how much the water does fall at rain events, it's typically, if it's a heavy downpour, it's been roughly 3 to 4 inches. So if Rebecca takes the cake for most water in her property, I probably take the least the prize that doesn't, because I'm not experiencing it nearly as much as these other folks. But I've never had water in my property. I do have a row of trees, some privacy trees in the back that I'm concerned about. If it's a lighter rain event to continue, it's maybe a couple, just an inch or two, but it's still sitting water, and it takes days to drain. So just wanted to go on record for that and ask for your support to get resolution on this. Thank you.
What we're going to talk about, as you get to the end of this booklet, testimonial 6 was Kevin. He just spoke. You just saw the flooding at his property. It goes from the south side of his property all the way out to Cambridge. So it looks like it may stop right at elevated part of his property, but it doesn't. What, Kevin, I don't know if you want to do this, other Kevin. He can speak more to the reason for the flooding. He's right next to it. But at the very end, Todd is going to come up here and talk to you about his. So let me show you. You're going all the way to here. And Todd's going to speak to that. So you're doing those.
I don't know if it's been explained or if you already know, but this drain has been called a French drain or a drain tile, and it ran across 4 lots. It is kind of a porous pipe that water soaks into, and then water takes the path of least resistance and flows through the inside of this pipe, and it actually connects right to the sewer in the street. So when this water was pouring out, and I said, Eli, you gotta reconnect that drain, he just shrugged his shoulders. Not his problem. And this elevation change, this is Jason's garage. It shows pretty well how much higher the new garage was than the existing grade, and Eli even put stone down there. Maybe it's like a koi pond kind of thing. I don't know about the fences. My fence collapsed and fell in. They put up a new one that's got kind of a 14-degree tilt to it, but that'll be torn out if they ever replace the drain. Thank you.
My name is Todd Fisher, resident of Berkley, 25 years. And I gotta say, I do love the city of Berkley. Have never had an issue, flying under the radar, just enjoying life. up until this all came about. And I don't know what page you guys are on. If you see the fence line here with the measuring tape, that happens to be my backyard. And that is how much water was in my backyard, and that is how high they built the elevation behind this existing garage, which prior to this was, as Marilyn said, flat, where you could see underneath my fence right at the beginning when she showed you those pictures. And if you look at the fence post, that is the new fence that they put in, and it doesn't even match up with the backline fence because that property is so high. You can see how high the fence post is above the existing fence. Now, I was sitting on my back deck back in July, and I heard a bobcat start up, and I was watching it go behind my garage, or behind the garage, Jason's garage, against my fence. I walked over, and I could see dirt being pushed and the fence bowing in. I went around the block, and I spoke with the gentleman who was doing the grading, and he said that he had put the stuff back there, or all the dirt back there, because the builder accidentally built the garage too high. Now what he did was when they dug out this basement, they took some of that dirt and pushed it all over there, then they formed it up. And I don't know how an inspector cannot come over there and see what they had done and measure that slab that they put in. Who knows if they put a rat wall in, who knows what they did, because when I FOIA'd the plans for this garage and I asked them for a pre-grade and a final grade, they said they do not do that for garages. They do not give out grades or require a pre-grade or a final grade, a proposed grade. So all I got was a little plan of the garage and a little piece of paper that just said okay on it, signed by the last inspector. And when they were digging this up, the neighbors had seen them taking sod from when they first started cutting for this basement at the house. They were taking the sod and putting it back there to get a base level to push all this dirt on top of. Now, I don't know if the other picture, no, they don't have another picture in there, but as I was back there trying to clean my yard up, I'm an avid gardener. My whole yard is perennials and annuals all the way around it, or was. After this, the back fence line probably won't have any, they're probably rotted out. But I went back there with my work boots on. Construction boots. The water was over my boots coming down in. That's how tall it was back there. And like I said, the gentleman said that he was told to put the dirt back there because they accidentally built it too high. And every time it rains now, I've been in my backyard once, and that was back there to do this. I won't go in my backyard because if you saw the pictures of Marilyn's water coming up to her pool, I also have a pool. The water comes up to my pool, goes around it, and in front where I have my couple stepping stones where I have my ladder, the water sits on top of there. And I can't walk in my backyard because it is just like swampland. It's like muck back there. And it never was, like Marilyn said, they had a good garden back there, a beautiful garden. I garden. It was nice and flat. And all my predecessors who have come up here, my neighbors, a part of our group, have all voiced a lot of the things I was going to say. And I hope you take all this into consideration when we get this to be taken care of. Not only the drain fix, but I don't know how, if I were to take my privacy fence down, which I had mentioned I was kicking around, and then someone could come in my backyard and see 13 inches of dirt and sod up against the chain link fence, that's just like I'm living in a hole there. And if I were to ever sell my property, I spoke to somebody and they said, yeah, that could affect the property value if you didn't have that fence up and somebody came and saw 13 inches of dirt across your whole backyard there. And I am with my neighbors as we're not looking for vengeance. We just want to, we're not looking for profit. We just want to be whole again, and we want to be dry again. That's all we want to, that's all we ask for. We've kicked around other ideas if this doesn't work, but we're hoping by coming here and getting on record, and I know Marilyn has done a fantastic job keeping in touch with people, and she keeps in touch with us. We have group emails, group texts, and we all keep in touch with each other, and hopefully we can get this resolved. And I don't know what the answer is to having a garage that's built 13 inches too high, how we're gonna that's without taking the garage down. I'm not saying taking the garage down. I don't know what the solution is, but I don't think having all that dirt pushed against my fence like that is gonna work for me. Especially, like I said, if you look at that tape measure and you see that there's 5 inches of standing water right there. And like I said, all my plants are probably gone. I do have a pine tree back there in the corner. And you might ask why I say that. Because of the last flood, I was sitting on my porch, 2 doors down, one of the maple trees. I actually heard it with a suction of it. It just popped straight up and fell right over Oakshire. And I know the pine trees does not have very deep roots. And I would like to say this isn't a witch hunt, which was brought up earlier. This is just people wanting some satisfaction to get back to where we were. And I can assure you, a couple people who spoke at the beginning, or anyone else here, would not want to live in the area where they cannot use their backyard. And if they've seen the pictures of how much water we're getting, I can assure you, they would not want to live there, or not. They would be putting up the same kind of I don't want to say argument, but putting on a presentation to get things justified, or get things rectified, I should say. So that's all we're looking for. We're not looking to cause problems. We're not looking to sit and, cause a witch hunt and point fingers and this and that. We would just like it fixed. And like I said, we know that drain needs to be fixed, and whatever else needs to be taken care of would be greatly appreciated. And I guess we might not know until springtime, when we do get a rain, what the results are from fixing the drain. And like I said, maybe doing something about this dirt, because like I said, if you can see that fence post, that's how high up they are. And if you look at my tape measure there, that's all the way across my whole back property. And like I said, the water comes all the way out. I haven't been in my backyard. I couldn't turn down my garden this year. Everything's still just standing there, dying on its own. And if any of you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me or any of my neighbors. We'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you for
Okay. Mr. Couples, is that the end of the presentation for now? Do you want to close?
That's the end of it.
Okay.
One of the first things we said to Matt when we met with him, because another city had advised us, who should we go to? And we told Matt we were told to go to him. We told him we're not a litigious group. We're not here to win some big whatever, any money, anything else like that. We want our yards returned to the way they've been. All the properties on Royal, I knew the original owners of those properties. And now that these new families have moved in, whether it's 15 years, 6 months or whatever, none of us should be dealing with this. And I guess it's kind of the current climate that you hear somebody come up here and talk about a witch hunt. We're not that group. We didn't say fire Dwayne. We just want our problem fixed. And like I said, I talked to Matt today. The first thing he did is he gave me his cell phone number, and I said, I promise I'm not going to call you every week. We're not going to do that. And I think I've called him about 3 times. And when he called me today, he told me the latest update and what's supposed to happen. And like I said to him, that's great. I'm glad we've got somebody working on this now. We're hopeful that something's going to get done, but I also told him we're not going away. So if we have to be here every single meeting and spend an hour of your time or whatever going through everything that's continuing to happen to us, we're going to do it. And we're going to protect our property. So I don't know, I appreciate Eileen for meeting with me, and for Matt, for Darshell. Everyone has been real helpful, but in 2 months' time, we're still basically at the beginning. And Matt did mention that they aren't going to give him a certificate of occupancy before all our problems are solved. And my concern is, are we going to know when those problems are solved if he does regrade and everything like that, and we don't get a big rain? I mean, what is the city needs to think of something that's going to put a hold on him, whether he finally does get a certificate of occupancy, that's going to still address our problems in the spring if all this is still flooding. I mean, take a look, keep your booklets, look at Rebecca's yard every day, and that's our worst case scenario, that her whole yard is flooding. And she just moved in this summer. So thank you, that's all we have to say. If you have
Okay.
any questions?
Not a question, but before you go, and in case you or your neighbors are, or your neighbors are planning on leaving after this, you've mentioned a couple of times that you've talked to Matt, and he's mentioned that we're moving towards potentially a resolution. While we are here and on TV and on public record, Mr. Manager, could you please tell everybody, in case they are not familiar yet with what is supposed to be happening in the timeline for that?
Absolutely. As Ms. Couple said, we have a new building official in place as of November 19th, so last week was their first full week on the job. The contractor did blow right past a timeline with the new building official. That took one time with this new gentleman, and he's already sidestepped the contractor completely and gone straight to working directly with the excavator themselves. We did receive a missed dig ticket today indicating that work was to begin on the Wednesday, the 5th. And so we do anticipate that work to actually happen this time. It's farther along than we've managed to get with the previous building official up to this point. So things do look promising. I forwarded to Ms. Couples today a timeline that I received from Keith Woodcock, our new building official, who gave us a detailed timeline, item by item, of when the temporary fix of a sump well was going to be installed, which that's the work that's supposed to start on Wednesday, as well as when the permanent fix of reestablishing that drain is going to come in, which is going to take about a week or more to complete. But our priority right now is to get these good people dry. As I said, it's paramount of importance, especially as the weather starts to turn. We don't want to end up with all that water freezing at the surface. So again, near term, temp well, sump well to pump that water out, and then in the next week or so, we'll be working directly with the excavator, bypassing the contractor in order to get the drain reestablished, so that we know come spring, which will be the ultimate test of how well this thing works. And then the regrading would come after that, protections for Mr. McNulty and his driveway after that as well, because they do need to utilize his driveway to make this fix. So Ms. Couples and Ms. McNulty both talked about what guarantees do we have that we're going to be able to hold this contractor to his word. We're going to do that through legal documents signed by the contractor saying he is guaranteeing an outcome, and if not, then he is legally responsible for doing it.
Okay.
And so we're not taking the approach that was previously taken. There's the colloquialism is there's a new sheriff in town, and it's absolutely true.
And to you and your neighbors, Mrs. Couples, obviously this is something that nobody should have to go deal with in any city, regardless of where you are. And the comments that were made earlier during citizens' comments about a witch hunt, that does not apply at all to what you guys are talking about right now. That is a
Well,
legitimate issue. It just happened to be, I think, at the same
Right,
meeting.
I understand
I don't
that.
want any of you guys to
I-
think that
right.
that's what the city is
They're all good with
viewing
it.
of somebody whose yards
We
are
know we're
flooding
not
left and right.
crazy,
That's not the case.
and we're not out to get anything. We just want our property, as Todd said, put back the way it was.
Should be.
And, the drain is a huge part of it, but also this elevation that Todd's down in a hole, that kind of thing. It'd be great if this gentleman, Mr. Woodcock, I don't know if he's walked over that way, can make any suggestions on what he thinks needs to be done there and what should, fix that problem. Because again, we're not going away. We appreciate your time, but we wanted to go on record tonight to let everybody know.
No, and we appreciate you coming and spending the time and being as thorough. Look, as council members, we probably don't hear about everything that happens in the city offices. It's just not part of the function necessarily of our role. So there may be folks up here short of seeing something on Facebook might not have known the extent that this is happening or what the actual cause was, that there was a drain that was taken out during excavation that has created these problems. So we appreciate you going into detail and having these documents that are now part of the public record. It's pretty clear what needs to happen, what's going to happen. Mr. Attorney, I do have a question for you. What legal recourse, if any, does the city have? Let's say we get into signed legal agreements with this developer. What do we do if he blows timelines?
Well, it depends on the scope of the documentation that is developed and the consequences and sanctions that can be built into such an agreement. As I understand it, without having gone through all of the detail, really there's two separate and distinct issues with respect to the French drain as well as the excavation
All
issue.
created
and the
by
grading. No,
Eli Construction, correct?
Right, but two, not just the French drain, but also
Correct.
the excavating.
Correct.
And you really need a solution as it relates to both of those issues. Certainly the context of permits that have been issued to the contractor, there is leverage that can be used in fashioning the appropriate remedy and protection for the homeowners, for the adjacent homeowners.
Okay, well then, we will make sure that you or John is certainly involved in this conversation moving forward, so that we can not only come to an expedited solution here, at least to the water, but also to the grading, and make sure that just because one happens to go away, the other one just gets kind of pushed off. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments from council at this point? Dennis?
I think just looking at our role going forward, one is oversight to make sure with the new staff that these problems stop happening. They were happening for years, maybe even decades, and so we are starting to turn a new leaf, and it should not be happening to anyone else going forward. But also, especially as we're going into the master planning process, looking at what as a community we want our infill development standards to be, and what is acceptable size, scale, elevations, making things
Setbacks.
work together. So to make sure that as part of our master planning process, we have those conversations, so that we're not going to stop, we don't want to stop infill development, but we do want it to happen responsibly and make sure that we're planning for that.
Sure. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. I just wanted to say I'm very impressed with the caliber of the materials that you assembled, the thoroughness with which this information was communicated, the ease with which you were able to share this information with us and for us to process this. And I'm also very dismayed that you guys needed to do that. This isn't good stuff, but you handled this very well, and I want to thank Eileen for helping move this forward, and I too will be paying close attention to the progress in the coming days.
Rebecca made our first presentation there, the biggest booklet that you have, and unfortunately she couldn't be here tonight because she's sick, but we appreciate everything she did. We have a really neat block and a really nice group of people, new people that have moved in, and that they're struggling with this is just like beyond, It's been several months of everything we've observed on this new construction, and I really do agree that, you have to have a little tighter control on this and what they're putting in there, and do they need to put a house that takes up the entire yard? Is that what Berkley wants? We're looking for new neighbors, but at this point, not so much. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight and telling your stories.
Yes, thank you.
Do you guys know who owns Eli Construction?
I'm guessing Eli?
No, is he from around here? Or what's?
I have all his information.
Cause it's like,
Yeah, he lives in Woodville.
of course.
Street is Peggy. Put a big porta-john in front of his
Thank you. Thank you all.
We not only had people that are affected by this, but I had other neighbors that came to support us tonight.
Nice.
Excellent.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
With that, Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 3 on tonight's agenda?
Presentations, matter of receiving a report from Plant Moran regarding the audit results for this fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018.
Is there a motion to receive the presentation on the audit?
So moved.
So moved by Mayor Pro Tem with support from Councilmember Dean.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
ready?
Neighbor,
We have some
we'll give us a
slides
minute
as
to
we
get this
typically would.
fired up for you.
Okay,
It's a
well, I
two-room
can get started. Keith will be going through the slides in just a minute, but Again, my name is Lisa Minetta, audit partner with the governmental auditing firm of Plante Moran. Very pleased to serve as the auditors for the City of Berkeley for several years now. With me is Keith Szymanski, who's the manager overseeing the day-to-day operations of the audit, which I'm sure, as all of you can appreciate, is a involved process. We're on site for a couple of weeks looking at the books and records for the city. Pleased to report that as a result of those procedures, we once again contributed an unmodified opinion to the CAFR document, which you have in front of you, the very large bound document. That is a clean opinion, so that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide on the financial statement, so we are glad to be able to provide that. Once again, Keith will go through an overview of the financial results for the city, just to give a quick snapshot. We are glad once again to have what we refer to as a fairly optimistic, a positive report on the financial condition of the city. Over the years, we've had to report on some very challenging times, certainly when we saw declines in state shared revenue, declines in property taxes, and it's great to be here to say that as a result of careful planning and careful monitoring of the budget, there is an increase to fund balance again this year, which isn't to say that there are no more challenges to be faced or that we're completely out of the woods. Certainly you'll hear a lot of talk about funding of legacy costs, retiree pensions, and health care continue to be a challenge to be faced. But it is great to see the city in a position to make decisions about the funding of those liabilities and looking at capital needs going forward from a position of a growing fund balance instead of where things were trending in previous years. So we do have a letter to cover, but first Keith will take us through some slides.
Good evening. The first several slides are going to focus on the financial results for the general fund, beginning on slide number 2, with a 3-year history of the general fund revenue by category. Total revenue in the general fund was about $11.2 million, which was an increase of nearly 4% from a year ago. Property taxes are the largest revenue source for the general fund, making about 63% of the total. And that property tax revenue increased about 1% compared to 2017. While there was an increase in taxable value of about 5% throughout the city, that was partially offset by lower millage rates. There was both the Headley rollback, which was a small decrease in all the millages, as well as a planned decrease in the public safety, pension and retiree health care millage as a result of slightly lower anticipated costs during the year. The next slide is a 3-year history of expenditures. While revenue increased by nearly 4%, the expenditures increased by less than 1%. Some of the savings, however, were due to planned capital improvements that did not take place in 2018 but are planned to take place in 2019. Public safety makes up about half of the general fund expenditures, while general government makes up about 25%, both of which are fairly typical of local units of government. And as I mentioned, it was just a slight increase in total expenditures during the year. As a result of revenues exceeding expenditures, fund balance did increase by about $1.1 million over the last year, but as I mentioned, some of that will be planned to be spent in 2019. While this is a favorable position for the city to be in, having over $6 million of fund balance in the general fund, it is important to keep an eye on those reserves and realize the importance that some reserves must be maintained on hand, both for cash flow operating purposes, potential emergencies or unforeseen expenses, as well as future capital improvements and the challenge of legacy costs, which we'll take a look at in a couple slides. Finally, here's a breakdown of the expenditures in the general fund. I apologize, the category names and amounts aren't coming through in the live copy, but they should be in your printed versions. The total fund balance is $6.2 million. A very small amount of that is in the form of non-spendable or restricted net position, about $200,000 each. $1.8 million is considered assigned. That's the planned spending for 2019, including the carry forwards from 2018. And the rest of it, almost $4 million, is unassigned and available for any form of future operations. Switch gears for one slide on number 6 and we'll look at the performance of the water and sewer fund. As you can tell, the first bar representing the revenue exceeds the second one representing the expenses. So there was an increase in fund balance over the last year. Total fund balance is nearly $16 million, but as you can see in the breakout in that net position bar, the vast majority of that is already invested in capital assets and infrastructure. So it is about $1.6 million that's unrestricted available for operations. Then finally, on the last slide, we do look at the current funding status of the pension and OPEB plans. Here, each bar represents the total liability of the future obligation for pension and retiree health care, and the blue portion at the bottom represents the assets. And the higher those are compared to the total, the better well-funded the plan is. So the general employees plan is 58% funded, the public safety pension plan is 80% funded, and the OPEB plan is 27% funded. On a combined basis, it's about 57% funded with an unfunded obligation of about $28 million across the three plans. So while that is a significant challenge, particularly in the perspective of the fact that the general fund has $6 million of fund balance right now, that is an improvement over the last time these were measured, and those total liabilities were nearly $36 million. So the good news now is that they are heading in the right direction, but to truly gain the proper perspective on the trend, I encourage you to look at multiple years, which are contained in the financial statement document. They are subject to changes in assumption, changes in performance compared to what was assumed, as well as actual market conditions. So should there be a downturn in the near future, that will immediately impact the funded ratio of these plans. With that, I'll turn it over to Lisa to wrap up the conversation.
Thanks, Keith. I guess I'll pause first. Are there any questions on the graphs and the information contained therein?
Questions?
Before we move on to the letters, okay. The other document that we contribute to this process is our report to the Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, which is divided into 3 sections. And so I will touch on the highlights within those sections briefly here. The first section of this document is our annual required communication to the City Council related to any internal control matters that come to our attention in the course of the audit, which are significant enough that we bring them to your attention for consideration. We do have 2 items that we've mentioned in here this year. The first one related to reconciliation of the city's bank accounts. Certainly a best practice is to reconcile all of the cash accounts on a timely basis. Very important for internal control purposes to identify any errors or misstatements within those bank accounts. We noted during the year, given the turnover in the finance director position that occurred during the year, those were not prepared on a timely basis throughout the course of the year. By the time we came in to do the audit, all of the bank accounts had been reconciled and any corrections made to the financial records, but we do bring it to your attention just given the importance of that internal control, that should be maintained throughout the year. The other item we have is one that we've reported on in previous years, given looking at the separation of responsibilities between the finance director position and accessibility to IT, to the information technology controls, and wanting to make sure that there is proper separation during the course of the year and in previous years. The role of the finance director did have also administrative access within the IT system, which ideally those responsibilities would be separated. We have discussed recently ways to, with the city manager, to accomplish that on a go-forward basis, to have those duties be separated. The second section of this communication really gets into an overview of significant matters encountered into the audit and just overall how did the audit process go. It starts out with a discussion of our responsibility in audit, which again is to give an opinion on the financial statements, which we have done. In terms of the audit itself, we did conduct it in the planned timing and the planned scope. There were no surprises that came up or significant changes in what we were required to do as a result of our procedures. In terms of significant audit findings, really the most significant change this year you'll notice within the comprehensive annual financial report itself is the adoption of a new accounting standard related to retiree health care. To bring the accounting for retiree health care more similar to how pensions have been accounted for for the last few years. And really, when Keith was showing that funded status of the retiree health care plan, that is now recorded as a liability within the financial statements where previously it was not required to be. So if you look at the first couple of pages that show the city as a whole in one financial statement, that liability is recorded there where previously it was just disclosed in the footnotes. So that's a pretty big change and also required some additional disclosures within the financial report. Besides that, the rest of this letter is very, I'll call it boilerplate language. We did not have any significant difficulties in performing the audit or any disagreements with management or even any very significant adjustments to the records, meaning that things were recorded properly at the onset of the audit, which is certainly what you would hope to hear. So that really concludes our presentation. The rest of the letter includes updates on legislative items, which the state, as you're aware, has been very busy in terms of changes to chart of accounts, additional reporting requirements, and so a lot to be considered, but really we're happy to entertain any questions at this time council might have.
Thank you, Lisa. Before I and Keith as well. Before I open it up for questions, could you just repeat the opinion that you started with?
Yes, so it is referred
Slowly.
to as an unmodified opinion.
Okay.
So a modification would be if we had something to report where the city was not in compliance with the reporting standard or there were significant errors. So unmodified does not sound like that overwhelming of a positive thing, but it is a clean opinion.
It's good.
Yes, it's good.
Does that also have any bearing on, you mentioned there were no errors that you encountered. Does that also speak at all to the financial viability of the city at this point in terms of fund balances and liability? Is that all part of that, or does that just mean during the actual accounting process we didn't find any errors and then that's separate?
So unmodified opinion really is just the technical term for saying the numbers are correct. It is really not an opinion on the quality or the financial sustainability of the city.
That would come in during your reports.
This
and
is
the
more,
problems
yes,
that you had.
exactly.
And we didn't have a laundry list of those.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Mayor, I do want to note, just on the bank recs, that staff was doing those month in and month out. They just, when they didn't tie out, that was the, where not having a finance director was difficult for us. But I don't want to leave council or with anybody at home with the impression that these just weren't being done and leaving us open to fraud. That's definitely not the case. And in fact, when we were able to tie them out, I think they were less than $150. They were very, very small.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
That is remedied past us, and again, staff worked very hard to try to keep those up to date.
Okay. Questions?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to thank you very much for the report. It's very good. Could you give us 30 seconds on Gatsby 83? Since it started in June of 2018, I think we're going to get really involved in that shortly, and I don't really understand it.
So Keith, would you like to?
Sure. So it is not yet effective. It will be effective for the fiscal year you're currently in. And it relates to asset retirement obligations, which is the technical term for any time you're using a capital asset for your benefit, but at the end of its life, there's a cost associated with taking it out of service. So common examples of those would be power plants or wastewater treatment plants where there's some sort of environmental remediation that needs to take place at the end of those.
Okay.
Smaller examples could be underground storage tanks or things like that. But anytime there's a legal obligation for costs at the end of the asset's useful life.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Councilmember Hennon?
This is for Mr. Baumgarten. The segregation of duties, is that been resolved, or are we making progress towards that?
Yes, we believe we have a resolution in place that will involve either removing administrative access from the finance director themselves, or producing a report either on a monthly or quarterly basis for a third person to review to make sure that there were no actions taken that would lend themselves to fraud of some sort.
Do we have a timeline on when that's going to be finished? Because this has been an open issue for a while now.
Yeah, we're working with Plant on getting it remedied as soon as possible. We'll have some opportunities to make some changes coming up, and so we'll be demoing 2 different versions of trying to meet this standard so it finally goes away.
Okay, thank you.
Would what city manager just mentioned meet the segregation of duties?
Yeah, so we've discussed, like you said, a couple of different options. So one, if the administrative access is fully removed, that certainly would. And then if that's not the case, we'll talk about what types of reviews could be put in place so that you know when you do it that it should be designed to address that sufficiently. Mm-hmm.
Mayor Pro
Yes,
Tem?
thank you. That was going to be my question as well. Certainly, having big fan of this stuff. I love the detail and the thoroughness with which this material is prepared and presented. And yet that pesky item keeps coming up. And I mentioned it again last year that I didn't want to see it this year. But it sounds like it's a relatively simple fix. I was going to offer the skills and talents of the technology committee if you needed some help with that. But it sounds like you at least have a course of action. I certainly would like to see that addressed as soon as possible. Thanks.
Additional questions, comments? Before we close this, I do want to thank Ginger, also Lori and Sue for everything that they've done in the finance department throughout this process. I know that is a very intense time of year for certainly our staff, but also the folks from Plant that are over here. So again, I want to thank them. If I could maybe just close with, if you had to somehow, and I'm not trying to put you on,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of am, but I kind of am not here.
I sense it coming.
If you had to look at our unfunded liabilities, our OPEB especially moving forward, and where we currently are, and this is something that I think I ask every year, and I don't want to necessarily go within comparison to our neighbors, because that really doesn't matter, because we're only focused on our folks here, but with the plan that we have in place and the things that we are doing, do you think we are in a position to meet the future obligations if we continue to do what we're doing?
So what I would say, and again, not to make comparisons to neighbors, but so the city of Berkeley has taken steps toward funding it, which many communities have not been able to put even a small amount away. So there are some that are at 0% funded. And so when we talk about 25, 26%, while that might not feel like a big step, every dollar that is put away that's now earning higher rates of return is going to help you to meet that obligation. So I would say, I can't see the future. I can't guarantee what investment returns are going to be, but it's solid progress. And that is, what I'm excited to see in my clients when they're able to put that away and be able to make solid steps toward funding it, even if it's not to 80, 90, 100%.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Keith. Any other final thoughts before we move on? No? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Boucher, would you please call the next item on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M8418, matter of approving the appointments to various boards and commissions.
Is there a motion to approve M8418?
Motion approved.
Support.
Motion approved by Councilmember Dean with support Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Before I throw this over to the city manager, it has come to my attention that there might not be some folks out there who understand how we appoint to boards and commissions, and as a council, we want to make sure that that is very clear in how we operate, and also how we are going to continue operating moving forward. So council, every member on council is notified, alerted via a council's shared drive for all the different boards and commissions when any applications come in. So because we have a packet today that may only include certain applications because they are the ones who may be up for appointment. That does not mean that council members have not seen every single application that ever gets on. We see them all. In order to try to maintain some sort of order and be a little more expedient in our discussions here, one of the things that we talked about at the last meeting and may have gotten a little bit mixed up in the translation was if we have one vacancy and we have 7 applications for that vacancy, prior to the meeting, council members, so that we operate within the Open Meetings Act, would send just the city manager a name of their preferred applicant for the various positions. Now, in which cases, when there's only one applicant, that's not super important. But when there are multiple applicants for 1 or 2 spots, then we need to do that. What will happen is then we'll have the meeting packet and those names, if you've received a vote from a council member, your name would then be on there and we would have open discussion on those appointments at the meeting. Does everybody on council understand that and clear with that? There was some discussion that maybe, you know, there's oftentimes accusations of something happening behind the scenes and behind closed doors, which seems to happen frequently, but that's not the case at all. We're very happy to have people volunteer for boards and commissions, and if we can put them all on a board, we certainly would. So moving forward, we will make sure that we follow the procedure that we spoke about, so that we can have whatever discussions and deliberations we want to have on those candidates that have received votes to come to the open meeting. Make sense? Good? Okay, before I do that, now I'll turn it over to Mr. Baumgarten to talk about what we have today on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have candidates in place for the Citizens Engagement Advisory Committee, the Environmental Advisory Committee, the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, Technology Advisory Committee, the Tree Board, and an alternate to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll go through each of the candidates. Tracy Rettig will be is appointed or is a nominee for a term expiring in 2019, replacing she's filling a vacated position vacated by Ms. Amy Keeley. The Environmental Advisory Committee is Ms. Audrey Pace, term expiring in 2020. This will be replacing Haley Riley, who is currently a member but has been unable to attend, and so ordinance requires only a majority vote by council to appoint a new individual. Parks and Rec Advisory Board is Ms. Jessica Alger with a term expiring in 2020, replacing the seat vacated by the wonderful Ms. Josephine Brewer. Technology Advisory Committee is Anna Luptick with a term expiring in 2019, replacing the seats vacated by Mr. Mike Fry. And the Tree Board is Mr. Robert Lathrop with a term expiring in 2021, filling a currently vacant position. And then the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate is Ms. Maria Ward with a term expiring in 2019, replacing Mr. Steve Allen, who was appointed at a previous meeting to as a full member of that body. So these are the slate brought before you today.
Additionally, as it relates to filling boards and commissions, in the event that there are multiple applicants for 1 or 2 positions, like we've done in the past, would be common, or don't be surprised if a council member maybe reached out just to ask you a few questions about your desire to serve on that board or commission, especially in the case where we have multiple multiple applicants for only 1 seat. Okay, looking at what we have on our agenda today, questions, comments on these candidates before moving on? No, Ross, I thought you. No, sorry, did not go up. No. Councilmember Blanchard.
Just a quick question. Does this fill all of our boards now? Do we have any more vacancies?
I believe this brings us up to full capacity.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm continue to be impressed with the talent that comes forth almost on a regular basis to help serve the city. And a minor plug that it's unlimited openings on the historical committee, so there's still room on there. Love to see some more help preserve the past and pave the way forward.
Okay, got it. Councilmember Stedman.
I think one of the points of confusion is we've never had so many applicants for boards and commissions as we have in the last several months and so on, which is a very good thing. So, or it's also fairly unusual to have vacancies at this time of the year.
Yeah, we've had a few longtime serving residents who have decided to step away for various reasons, and we're, like you said, lucky to have so many folks willing to step up in the city to serve on these boards and commissions. Without any further comments, then Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on M8418, sorry. It's a motion.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 5 on tonight's agenda?
Resolution number R3818, matter of adopting the City of Berkeley Public Participation Plan.
Is there a motion to approve R3818?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Gavin with support from Councilmember Hennan. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first of the next 3 items that comes to you by way of the city's planning commission. The first document, the public participation plan, has been put together by the city's planning commission over the last several months. It is a precursor to the city's master plan, and it's also a requirement for us to progress in the redevelopment ready communities program through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Mr. Tim McLean, our community development director, is here to fill in any questions. He did provide a resolution for the council to consider in the packet.
Mr. Director?
Well, the public participation plan was created out of a need and desire to enhance the process by which public participation occurs. Kind of the public participation plan was modeled on a guide from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation titled Public Participation Plan Strategy, and it's part of their Redevelopment Ready Communities program. One of the best practices is having a public participation plan. We use that guide as well as public participation plans from a number of communities across the state, many of which are engaged in the RRC program. I've worked over the last several months with the Planning Commission to come up with a draft that will meet best practices of the RRC program and is tailored to the needs of our residents.
Questions, comments from council before we move on this? Councilmember Hennan?
Just a few comments on, making sure this isn't a plan that sits on a shelf and, doesn't get used. I think one thing, I don't know if when, especially ZBA and Planning Commission members come on board, if we give them, any materials for onboarding, but I could definitely see this as, something, sort of a, welcome to the Planning Commission, and here's your stack of stuff to read, and, putting this in there. Have you started putting any of these things into practice yet?
Are you talking specifically items from the
From the public participation plan, yeah, from this new document.
Well, it's primarily it's intended as a guide. It's not set in stone. Which methods would be used. The work that the downtown master plan. Those consultants have had a very robust community engagement portion of the plan, and that's something that I'm hoping will be echoed, for all of our master planning processes, moving forward. I think we've learned some lessons of what we can do better, with public participation, and I think this plan will address a lot of those moving forward. It's intended as a kind of a living document, so something we'll review every few years and update as technology improves, different methods,
Great. One thing I could envision is forming this into a short checklist that just, each time we go through an agenda item, does this apply? Have we done this? Those sorts of things that just make it streamlined to get through it and, to see if we are, following these things. And maybe an occasional report card. I know there's room for like feedback loops in here. You know, we'll ask people who come to the meetings, how did we do? You know, so do some self-assessment on that to see how we're doing. One outreach effort I personally had when I first came into office that I'm not seeing yet, and I wanted to follow up how we're doing, getting signs, you know, physical signs on properties that are going to have public hearings, you know, notifying people there's going to be a public hearing here about this, you know, so people driving by, if they're interested, can look up the information and come in. Where are we in that process?
As of last week, those signs are ready and in my office. As soon as we have a development project that requires a public hearing, you will see those signs get deployed.
Okay, great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions, comments as it relates to the public participation plan? Councilmember Gavin?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to say a thank you to the Planning Commission and the residents who spent a lot of time on giving feedback on this. There was a lot of thoughtful discussion over multiple Planning Commission meetings, and so I just wanted to say a thank you for the input to the members themselves and, of course, to the residents, too. Thank you.
Excellent. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. I also want to echo the gratitude and appreciation for this this foundation here. It does seem to have some very specific plays in it that can be run. In particular, there's a series of quite thoughtful flowcharts that describe for different kinds of things that are worthy of outreach and engagement. There's step-by-step right through the flowchart here about how to do these different kinds of things. I'm real pleased to see that in writing, and of course, as you mentioned, this being a living document, once we run this play a couple of times, of course we'll make adjustments. So this worked really well, oh, that didn't quite work out, you know, that kind of stuff to tweak the flowcharts, but you can't do that until you have it, and so I'm very happy that we now have such a thing, and let's put it to use.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment as well on the flow charts. I think, granted, some of them have a lot of action and a lot of different arrows moving forward, but I think it's a visual way, but also it's a little easier way for folks to understand our process pretty clearly. You know, maybe we should make sure that those are accessible at meetings in the future so that people can pretty clearly see, okay, this is a special land use review flow chart, and these are the things we're going to do, and this is the process that we're going to go through. If A, then B, so that everybody knows what's happening. They don't have to go back through and try to find it in our code book somewhere to see what's going to happen next. I think it's going to make it more efficient, but that's only if we actually use it and don't just say, oh, yeah, we've got it. I can pull it up here on this page, but we need to make it visible. We need to actually have it out there, and we need to make sure that folks can see these so that it's just much more efficient for our process. And then there's a lot less questions, too. It's pretty simple. This is what's going to happen, so let's do it.
And to speak to your comments, Mr. Mayor, I have been working on a guide to development in my spare time. With our changes in the building department, I'd like to look at some additional revisions to that and hopefully get that rolled out. That does include process flow charts for all of our forms of development.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Any other questions or comments on that? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on R3818?
Hennan.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Excuse me, yes.
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 6 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number O-1518, matter of considering the first reading of an ordinance to rezone property described as 3339 Cummings Avenue, south 20 feet of Lot 113, also all of Lot 114, Berkley School Park subdivision from parking district to single-family residential district, R-1D.
Is there a motion to approve O-1518, or O-0518, sorry?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion approved by Councilmember Gavin with support from Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief introduction before we turn it over to Mr. McLean. As you can tell very clearly from the motion, what the request was, there is a request to convert from parking back to single family after being changed many, many years ago. As you'll see in your packet, the draft of the ordinance is included, as well as an excerpt from the unofficial minutes of the 11/27 of this year Planning Commission meeting, and that showed how maker of motion, seconder of the motion, and then how it was voted on by the Planning Commission. Mr. McLean?
Yes, as you saw from your packet, this property, along with a number of others, was rezoned at the initiation of the city back in 1986. Of the 5 properties that were rezoned, 2 of them were actually developed as parking. The remaining 3 are still houses. When the applicant purchased the property, he was unaware that it was owned P1 parking. He came to the building department with plans to demolish the existing structure and construct a new house. You know, that was when we said, you know, wait a minute, it's own parking, so you would have to go through a rezoning request. It was a close decision on the recommendation from the Planning Commission. I can understand the arguments either way for rezoning or not rezoning. One thing I think it's important to remember, there's been 32 years for this property to be developed as parking, and it has not yet come to fruition. However, with changes in ownership of the Doll Hospital properties, it's possible that there will be an increased demand for parking in that area.
What was the recommendation of the Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission recommended denial of RZ-02-18.
Is there an administrative recommendation?
I would defer to the recommendation of the Planning Commission. You can see by the vote, it's a tough call. I see the benefits in either case.
Is the applicant here? Please.
And I did talk to one of the neighbors, he is here as well. So, where do you want me to start?
Name.
Grant Drivich.
Grant.
I'm from Royal, well, I live in Royal Oak now. Our shop's out of Troy.
Okay.
We've got 2 other projects in addition to this one going in Berkley.
Okay.
We bought the property under the assumption that we could build a single-family residential house. And, you know, obviously through zoning, that was how it was advertised to us too, as a tear down. We've got a property on 2663 Griffith, 1799 Griffith. The 1799 is a remodel, 2663 is a new construction. We've tried, we're kind of a younger, newer builder in the community. We've made a lot of efforts to be more responsible. That includes a purchase of a new Caterpillar skid steer that we actually own, because it's, you know, one thing I found, it's important to maintain the sidewalks. You know, and that was something, it's really hard as a construction site without a Bobcat to maintain sidewalks and maintain, you know, the job sites. We also do mandatory, like, 6-foot construction fences, which I know some of the other cities, like Birmingham, enforce. So, you know, coming forward, we're looking to be really a part of the community and do responsible development. It was an oversight kind of on my point buying the property. I would like to see it, obviously as the builder, turn into single-family residential. My intention is to do a 4-bedroom house with an attached garage, so you're not going to encroach into the parking in the street. If you had, you know, husband and wife, you've got 2 parking spots, you know, that you can pull up, and you're not going to lose parking by building a new structure there. You kind of almost gain it, because if I was to turn, say, the property into a rental or something along those lines, you're going to lose that parking space. You know what I mean? Because you're going to have a single driveway, and if somebody wants to park in the street versus two driveway parking spots. I would find it a downgrade to the neighborhood if we turned it into a parking or if I sold it. It's been this way for 32 years, or 31? 32. 32 years. I wasn't even born 32 years ago. But there also wasn't cell phones 32 years ago, and what's going to happen 32 years now with the environment, with technology and cars and parking. We've got a residential, or I'm proposing a residential development deal right now that we will move forward on relatively quickly, as opposed to parking that we don't know if it'll ever be, you know, developed that way. To this point in time, I have not received any offers on the property or any interest with it in regards to being parking. You know, if there was 4 other people here saying, hey, we wanted this lot for the, you know, the Doll Hospital property that we purchased, and, you know, we want to turn it into this, you know, it might be a different story. But from a community standpoint, you know, it's just another parking lot. And I know there's been other businesses that have fought to get in parking lots, you know, and it's something, and you've had a lot of resistance from neighbors. This is something, obviously, it's already zoned for parking. You can turn it into parking, but who wants a parking lot across the street from them, behind them, or next to them? You know, and you know, like I said, it was an oversight on my part of view, but I'd like to, for the community, build a nice new house there. The lot is 60, I believe it's 60 by 130 or 60 by 115, so it's a nice sized lot. We can do an attached garage there. I'm trying to think, any questions or concerns?
Before we discuss, any questions for Grant at this point?
I've got a question for Tim.
All right. I thank you, Grant. We appreciate you being here to answer any questions and to give us a little more background.
Mr. McLean, I'm looking at the map that shows 3995 Thomas, which is the area directly behind the Doll Hospital. And that's where they had all that playground equipment set up out there. Is that all zoned for parking?
I believe it is, yes. And I believe there was a variance for the playground equipment. There was an old.
So if somebody bought that, that could be turned into double row of parking, that whole section, and would provide us quite a bit of additional parking. And the Doll Hospital also owns the spot that's next to Grant's place, right?
Yes,
Is that
yes,
correct?
sir, that's correct.
Okay, so they own that. They own the one small section, which we don't know the number of, in 3995 Thomas. So there's quite a bit of parking there now, so. Did you see this? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about these. Here's another one. Maybe wants to look at it.
No, they're a little different. Other questions right now, comments on this?
I have a
Go ahead before we
question.
deliberate.
So it was mentioned that a couple of the properties were changed to parking. And what was the circumstance of that change?
Looking back at the old case files from 1986, the rezonings were initiated by the city, and the thinking at the time was that those parcels would eventually be purchased either by the business community or the city in an attempt to increase parking in the 12-mile corridor near Greenfield Road.
So they were houses sitting on those properties, and then the properties were vacated and they were torn down, and then parking was made, or? No, okay.
Just rezoned.
Just rezoned, okay.
And two of the five were developed as parking.
Okay.
Whereas houses are still standing.
And so the other three, people were living there?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And there was a press clipping from 1986, and it was a controversial rezoning at the time.
They always tend to be.
I do have another question. At what part of the process, I guess I'm wondering, when you do a title search, I mean, how does it come up with, Grant wasn't aware that this was zoned parking. How might he have been made aware of that?
I'm not able to speak to what title company they went through, or.
I mean,
or where
is it
they
even a title issue? I don't know, but I would think it's somewhere it would be like, hey, it's not residential, or I don't know.
It's possible. It's also kind of an unusual circumstance to have a house that's, a residential lot that's zoned as parking.
Okay. Thank you.
Just building on that, though, the city zoning map is a publicly shared document, is listed on the city's website.
Okay.
And again, we have people that come in and in the course of doing the due diligence to confirm zoning on properties pretty often. So the zoning of a property is never kept a secret from anyone.
Thank you. I have another
Keep going.
Sorry,
You're still on.
I'm rolling now. I believe that there is a downtown plan and a parking study in the works that the DDA is conducting. Do we know when exactly? I think I read May 2019.
As I recall, the director at the last planning commission meeting alluded to a draft would likely be presented to the planning commission in May of 2019, so we don't yet know what the results of the parking study are.
Okay. Is that accurate?
The good news is she's here.
Hiding behind the tree.
Behind the tree?
Yeah.
Like a present here.
Well, I guess you could say that. So yeah, actually, I think the council back in '86 was thinking with a lot of foresight. I think it's, while yes, there's been 32 years that nothing has been done, I also think that we're only now at a position where the city and the DDA are even capable of looking at what needs to be happening down there. We all know West 12 Mile is struggling, let's be honest. It's not our booming commercial corridor. One of the issues down there is parking. The fact that nothing has happened with parking there is related to the fact that the Doll Hospital sat there for decades and didn't need extra parking. The large Doll Hospital portion to the west end has been purchased by one of our downtown business owners who's expanding his property in there. But even with turning that parking where the playground equipment currently sits into additional spaces, it doesn't afford that much additional parking, and there's no municipal parking nearby. We are in the process of doing the downtown's first comprehensive plan. You know, the master plans, comprehensive plans in the past have always had a downtown component, but not one where there was ever a real in-depth approach to what needs to happen from a land use perspective. At the same time, we are updating that parking study. And who knows what is that going to yield? To the gentleman's point, we know transportation is changing, but that's why we hired these guys who are experts in these fields so that we can determine, what those needs need to be. If we give away this potential parking now, we never get it back. And if that means that it limits what we can do as far as developing that business district, which is, its health is critical to the health of this city, then there's no turning back. So what harm is there in waiting 6 or 7 months to see how the parking study and the downtown master plan come back? I mean, to me, I'm so impressed that in 86 there was a council that said, hey, we need to be thinking about this stuff. It's unfortunate it's taken us 32 years to get to the point where we're actually starting to strategically think about that.
Thank you. Vivian, I appreciate that. Sure.
Paul and Rachel Knapp were residents of 3325 Cummings, which is the lot just south of this proposed new build. So back in 2016, we bought our first home in Berkley. We love it so far. We're very excited to be here. Seems like a very exciting time, like they were talking about. There's a lot of new buildings coming in, a lot of new people. It's very busy. It's very exciting. So we see ourselves being here for an extended period of time. Like we said, we live just south of that. That property that's there now was a rental property from the Doll Hospital. I don't know if everybody's already aware of that, but that place was not kept up well at all. I mean, you can see the porch is just sagging. They never took care of the garage. There were big rats running around our property all the time that we see. Very unsightly to people when we're in our backyard hanging out, having a barbecue, that sort of thing. And also to the neighbors around the area. So, we moved into the house thinking, okay, this property may be a little dingy right now, but maybe somebody might come in, fix it up, maybe a new builder comes in and puts in a new home. We talked with Grant, and he told us that was happening. We were very excited, you know, to have that better looking home. Recently, just found out that the vote, you know, was 5-4, very close. We were kind of bummed about that, and heard about the parking issue being zoned for parking. You know, the way we see it right now, we have 2 dogs. We're hoping to start a family pretty soon. We bought that house hoping that that would be, you know, have a neighbor next to us, not a parking structure. Well, I understand, you know, the point of view. You know, it's easy for somebody on the outside to say, well, why don't we wait another 8 to 9 months to see if that turns into something that could be parking down the road, when even that sounds like it's more of a proposal that might take another year or 2 to be, you know, have any consequence. And all this seems very hypothetical to me right now. We're talking about potential businesses. There really hasn't, as she said, there's nothing on that west side of 12 Mile that really has shown any sort of life at this time. So to us and all the neighbors that I've talked to around the area, you know, we really are hoping that maybe that vote can be reconsidered to letting that new build happen, because really at the end of the day we're talking about, I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but you know, a few additional parking spots. And this is, you know, a property that right now is very unsightly. You know, you can drive by 12 Mile, you can see it, it's ugly. And it sounds like the alternative would be to either turn into parking or in the meantime turn it into a rental property. But that property is, you know, I talked to Grant about it, it's beyond repair. I mean, he can't just go in there, kind of patch it up, make it look nice for somebody to come in. I mean, it looks structurally not sound. And so that's kind of where my concern is. You know, obviously, especially with some of the talks earlier, we're not looking forward to the whole construction process happening next to us. But I think at this time it's a much, much better alternative, you know, to having parking or having that dingy looking rental there. So we hope that vote could be reconsidered. But
as a personal side note too, we moved into that house not wanting to be the first house on the street, not wanting to be near a parking lot. If I had known that, we didn't even want to consider houses that were the first on the street or near a parking lot, just for personal reasons and wanting to start a family, having dogs, didn't want a ton of cars pulling in and out. And so now to hear that that is a potential, we're very concerned that our own personal property and desires might be at risk too.
Okay. Thank you both for coming tonight.
Thanks.
Yep. Sure.
I do want to talk about some of the stuff. There is stuff happening down there. It's pretty exciting. I mean, we've got the old Curves that now is Zalman's Jewelers. You've got Sila's, which is turning into Green Lantern. Fabulous, redevelopment there. You've got an exciting project going on at the Doll Hospital and some very, very cool and exciting things. So it's not like this is a dead zone. This district is starting to emerge, and what's happening is exciting. So I want to make sure people understand that there is stuff happening, and it's pretty exciting to see this district start to bloom after so many years.
Definitely. Thank you.
Totally understand, but I do want to say that the lot that is currently there is never full. There's only maybe a couple of cars in it currently, and even though there might be some new development in the area, to think that you need more parking on top of parking that's already underutilized doesn't seem reasonable. So, thank you.
So, what we are tasked with here is, what do we want that parcel to look like moving forward? What is the vision? I know that we are waiting the parking study, we're waiting the master plan, we're getting into the master planning process, a number of things that are happening right now. This property was rezoned in 1986, has been that way for quite some time. It's also my understanding that because it's zoned parking, and Tim, correct me, there can be improvements to the existing property, but you can't change the footprint, is that it? What?
That's correct.
Yes, sir, that's correct. You can do renovations. Any additions would not be permitted absent a variance. It's considered a legal non-conforming structure.
Non-conforming, okay. All right, I just wanted to get that, because I think for us, our first discussion has to be about the item before us, and then secondary to that, depending on how we go. One, if the property is not safe, or maybe we need some inspections. I mean, something's going to have to happen at that property regardless, and And Grant, as you happen to be the owner of that property now, whatever way we'll have to figure out a process moving forward if it can be improved. If it doesn't get rezoned, or if it gets rezoned, how quickly we can get that thing taken down, if that is the will of the council. Okay, 2 months. It'll be in January, February. All right, council, we need to have a discussion here. So the motion on the table is to approve the ordinance. If you chose to follow the Planning Commission's recommendation, we'd be voting no on this tonight. But before we get to that, what is council thinking? Anybody have any thoughts on this as it relates to what we want that area to look like? Jack?
Thank you, Ron. I've just got a question for the city. If that's been a rental, we must have rental inspections on that. Do we know what the rental inspection said about the quality of the structure itself?
I will have an answer for that question. I will find out when the most recent rental inspection was and what the results were. However, I'm inclined to believe that if the house is still there and I don't know if there's a tenant there or not, but there were no...
Is there a tenant there? Okay.
Well, then we have a vacant. Yeah, so it's been vacant for an extended period of time, we would have it inspected as well.
I would hope the former owners went through the process of registering that with us, yes.
Any additional questions, Councilmember Blanchard, on?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay. Any other?
I have a
Yep.
question.
Okay.
Would Grant have the option of not demolishing the existing home, but taking it down to the studs and rebuilding, not changing the footprint, but recreating a home in the existing parameters of the property?
That could be a possibility. I would have to see some plans and the building official.
I mean,
and I would have to-
yeah.
Yeah, we would have
But-
to
Okay.
see what's being proposed.
Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, so while I'm sympathetic with the situation and these decisions always are going to suck for somebody, need to divorce the intentions and mistakes from what are good planning principles. And, we are planning for the very long-term horizon, in this area. And not just looking at what's been there in the past and what's there now, but what possibly could be there in the future. And I see if we make this residential, rezone this residential, we've severely limited the options there for at least the next 50 years probably. There's not going to be a new house going in there and then someone clamoring to take it down, right back down to parking. But if we leave it parking and we find in the future, as we develop more plans, as technologies change, if we don't need the parking, it can always be rezoned residential at that time. But if I'm looking at the long-term impacts, I feel it needs to remain zoned parking to give us flexibility we need for this area, for these businesses, and perhaps, if it's not needed in the future, rezone it residential then.
Okay. Thoughts, Councilmember Gavin, before we?
Thank you, Your Honor. Certainly, given the Planning Commission's, the closeness of the vote, not an easy decision. But I do believe there is a demonstrated need for parking on this side of the downtown district. And certainly there was a strategic vision that was envisioned at the time that this was rezoned. And given the fact that there has been a recent doubling down of efforts of economic development in that portion of our downtown, I certainly wouldn't want to handcuff that development by eliminating a parking tool in our economic development toolbox.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Blanchard?
If we keep this zone parking, what are we going to be looking at that lot for the next 30 years? We may have something that we don't like there. Because the owner, all he can do is remodel it and patch it up a little bit and try and rent it. So we may have a problem with that.
That's kind of what I was going to ask the owner, is what would you do with the house as it is right now if it stayed P1 and you just had a house there?
Can you come up to the microphone, please? Sorry, so people at home can hear you.
I would keep it as a rental, and I would turn it into a rental, and I'd probably do the bare minimum I need it to get it to a rental, which I don't want to do. You know, the option of tearing it down, you know, and getting a variance and tearing it down on the first floor and going up another story, if I was to get a variance with that, that's very bad practice. There's a lot of builders I've seen that have done that and put out a very bad product for a homeowner. You've got all your utilities, your sewer, your water, stuff like that, where you've got old existing. The house right now, I mean, can I get it to pass a rental inspection? Yeah. Will I ever sell it as parking? I mean, it's one of those things. I can see where the need for parking is, but it's been 32 years. The Dow Hospital sold it to me. They should have kept it, and they should have sold it as parking if that's what they were going to do. You know, if that was what's on the table. A vision is great, but a plan is even better. And an executed plan or a plan in progress is has something to be said by it too. We can say you need parking, we need this, you know, you need that. But the problem is it takes developers, young developers, old developers, people like me that have a vision of what they're going to do and execute. What I'm seeing here over the last, 32 years with what's going on there in the last 2 months, the city could have came forward and made an offer to the Dow Hospital and said, this is part of our plan, or our vision, and we need this parking. The property sat on the market, I think it was 3 or 4 months, and not one other offer besides mine was presented. That has something to be said behind it, because if it's that valuable to those businesses or that valuable to the city, it should have been jumped on. It shouldn't have been something where you're sitting there for 3, 4 months waiting. Real estate is quick. When something's that desirable, it gets jumped on. We're sitting in and we've got this vision from 32 years ago that we don't even know what direction it's going to go. We could sit here for the next 6, 8, 10 years. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with technology. We don't know what's going to happen. We can sit here in 6, 8 years. Another thing too is we can sit, if for some reason parking becomes that valuable, you can always rezone residential to parking. And if we're talking about a house here with neighbors in a community that's going to be rebuilt with a plan, that I have a plan right now versus a vision. And where I see visions, but you have to execute.
I imagine it may have sat on the market for that long because it was zoned parking potentially, and a business may have been one who was more incentivized to maybe purchase that. Potentially, I don't know for sure. All right, let's. Yep.
Quick question. You said you bought up the Dow Hospital. Was that from the previous owners or the current owners?
From the parishes, the previous owners. So it was through title too. It was zoned. I do have a title that is listed residential.
So they listed residential?
Yeah. On the title.
Sounds like that's a problem.
Yeah. So they're going to be on the hook for something.
I would certainly think so.
But at the same token, I don't want to make this a situation where I sit here and decide to turn it into parking. I don't think it's not my opinion on what should happen with a community, but it's been a house and it's been a crappy house, and I'd like to see it a nice house.
Okay, I again appreciate you coming. Our decision is can't solely be based on what is currently happening in there now. As you know, we have to make our decision based on what we're looking at for the future. And I think we've heard from a couple council members right now that have some legitimate concerns. One on what we want to see in the future, and what potentially would be there if we don't move on the parking. So whenever we have a zoning issue, this one and the next one, inevitably somebody's happy, somebody's mad. It's just kind of the way things work. And this is one of those cases, as we saw with a 5-4 vote at the Planning Commission level, that it was very difficult to ascertain the proper direction for the city. For me, it just does come down to what we see for the future of the city and what we see in our downtown area. And if there is a need potentially in the future for parking or if there's not. As somebody mentioned, we've had issues with parking in other places in the city. And especially in that area, parking is certainly a consideration. At the same time, we've had property there, and we have not utilized or turned any of those, with the exception of a couple, into parking lots at this time. I, though, am not inclined to rezone this from parking, at least not right now. I want to see what happens. I do understand the potential impact for you, Grant, and also for your neighbors. At the end of the day, I am only one vote here, but for me, I think it did take incredible foresight for the city to do this in 1986. And I think we are much closer to being able to make that a reality right now with the current conditions and what's happening in the city. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's going to happen in a year or 2 years. It's not really my decision. But I think if we have that parking available to us, it potentially could be very valuable in that area, especially when our master plan is done. If our master plan that we're working through right now comes through and says, look, all these places should be parking in the future, that's going to be very important to us. So I'm hesitant to rezone anything right now. I do realize the position that it puts you in, but I mean, it was parking, and if it did say residential on that title, then that's a separate issue that should certainly be resolved. With that, if there are no further questions, okay.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick comment of appreciation for you guys coming out here. You do put a human face to what just seems like a piece of paper and some legalese stuff, and this is not an easy decision. I will be siding again with the vision for our downtown, but I want to thank you guys for bringing this to our attention and for helping make this real. I've seen good parking lots and I've seen bad parking lots, and if this does take that direction, I will make sure that whatever happens there is very comfortable for you guys and for whatever happens with you as the current owner of this lot. So I won't be supporting this tonight either.
Okay, with that, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on 0518?
Stedman?
Is that 05?
15.
1518, sorry.
Stedman?
No.
Baker?
No.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
No.
Gavin?
No.
Henan?
No.
And Turbrack?
No. 01518 did not pass. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 7 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number 01618, matter of considering the first reading of an ordinance to rezone property described as 3910 11 Mile Road, Lot 278, Thomas Park subdivision, from 11 Mile District to Single Family Residential District R-1D.
Is there a motion to approve 01618?
So moved.
Moved by
Support.
Councilmember Gavin, with support from Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much like the previous item, you have a copy of the ordinance as well as an excerpt from the Planning Commission meeting indicating how the commissioners voted on this particular item. It was, I'm sure Mr. McLean will tell you, it was not supported. Had all planning commissioners voted to deny this particular request. That is the recommendation of the Planning Commission before you.
Mr. McLean?
Yes, the property in question is the former Poly Market. As you all well know, over the years, that's been a number of iterations of a convenience store or liquor store. It's a bit unusual in size in terms of how small it is. The applicant, the reason they were seeking the rezoning was the fact that they were almost unable to provide any on-site parking with the small size of that site. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend denial of this. That whole area along 11 Mile is zoned 11 Mile District. You have one parcel that is zoned residential. That's because there is a house there in that location. The Planning Commission didn't feel that a residential rezoning in that area would have been appropriate given previous recommendations in the master plan and looking at the proximity of neighboring properties.
How many people spoke at the public hearing?
Don't believe there were, no, there was one neighbor on, I think she was one or two properties to the north.
Okay.
Thought it was unusual to change that designation from 11 Mile District to residential.
Okay, thoughts from council? Is the applicant here?
Do not believe
I
the
mean, seeing as how I
is here. Do not believe the
pretty much know
applicant
who
is
everybody
present.
is. I'm assuming not, but I did not want to, again, make assumptions in case there was. The applicant is, okay, so no applicant for this. Council, what are your thoughts or questions for Mr. McLean right now before we vote? Councilmember Hennon?
Question, if it's left commercial and, is truly a unique property, they can seek relief from the ZBA for the parking requirements.
That is correct, and the property previously had a garage that was deemed unsafe. They recently demolished the garage, and the owner has talked about paving over some of the green space that would accommodate additional parking. They might be able to accommodate 6 on-site spaces.
Thank you.
Councilmember Blanchard?
Thank you, Your Honor. Who owns the lot to the rear that I see lot all the way across there?
The property next door to Holly Market owns that.
Oh, okay.
Additional questions on this item? We're talking again, another zoning, rezoning, this time to residential in the 11 Mile District. Anybody have any input on this before we call the question?
Seems pretty clean.
I think that would be kind of spot
Okay.
zoning.
Yeah, well, it certainly would be spot zoning. With no additional question or comments, at least at this point. Again, Ms. Boucher, the motion was to approve 01618, so if you are not in favor of this rezoning, please vote accordingly. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Baker,
No.
Blanchard,
No.
Dean,
No.
Gavin,
No.
Hennon,
No.
Stedman,
No.
and Turbrack.
No. Ms. Boucher, would you please read the next item on tonight's agenda?
Communications,
Who is the lucky winner?
Councilmember Blanchard.
Perfect. Councilmember Blanchard, you're up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of things. One, Holiday Lights Parade went off without a hitch in the rain. I just wanted to thank all the volunteers that put in a lot of hard work to get that organized. And it was a great event, although I don't think we had quite as many kids standing to see Santa Claus because their parents said, "It's raining out here, let's go home."
Kids would have waited all night.
Yeah, yeah. And another one of my safety topics, some statistics to share. The threat of winter fires is real. 890 people die in winter home fires each year. $2 billion in property loss occurs each year from winter home fires. Winter home fires account for only 8% of the total number of fires in the U.S., but result in 30% of the fire deaths. Cooking is the leading cause of winter home fires. Heat source too close to combustibles is the leading factor contributing to the start of winter fires, 15%. And be careful, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. is the most common time for fires. So I want to thank you all for listening to my thing on Thanksgiving, and we didn't have any fire runs on Thanksgiving, so that was good. So the same thing goes for the Christmas season. And one other thing, if we get a big snowstorm and you live next to a fire hydrant, near a fire hydrant, please help out by shoveling around the fire hydrant, keep snow 3 feet away so that we can hook up faster if we have to go to a fire. We carry a shovel on the fire truck, but if we got to stand there and dig the fire hydrant out, it's going to take us a little longer. So appreciate any help you could give us. Thank you.
Councilmember Stedman?
The Community Engagement Committee meets this coming Wednesday, and we will be meeting this time upstairs in the Public Safety Building. So if anybody wants to come observe or, listen, meet that committee, there'll be room for you now. The Beautification Committee will be meeting again a week from Wednesday, and at that point in time, I'm sure they will be making decisions on any winners for holiday light decorations. And the library board meets the third Wednesday of the month, but I don't think we're meeting this December. Oh, no, we are. We're meeting on the 10th. We're meeting on Monday. Okay, we substituted the time. So anyways, just check their website for any of the Christmas programs that are coming up and possible times when your kids are on vacation that they're going to have activities for them while they're home from school. And that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. 3 quick updates as well. First, from the Downtown Development Authority, DDA. I want to thank everybody who attended the Coolidge Safety Open House last week. We had over 50 folks come out and engage in the conversation, fill out the forms, and provide feedback. The DDA and administration and council will be looking at that input in the weeks and months ahead as we move forward with some kind of consideration around that. So that was fantastic. Merry Month continues throughout the downtown as well, including this upcoming Friday the 7th from 5 till 9 p.m. Eastern is the Merry and Bright Shopping Night. So come out and enjoy all that our downtown has to offer. See some of the new and exciting places that are joining our downtown community and help continue to shop local. And for more information on the DDA, easy website, downtownberkeley.com. The Historical Committee wants to thank everybody who made their way into the museum as part of the Holiday Lights Parade event and festivities. You may have noticed the museum continues to go through a slow, gentle transformation of different artifacts and items from our city's past, celebrating seasonal items as well as things of particular interest or new additions to the library to the museum's collection. And as mentioned earlier, they welcome any and all additional volunteers who want to help a little or a lot. Everybody brings a story, and we'd love to add yours to the mix. The museum is open most Sundays from 2 to 4 and Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And third committee, the Technology Advisory Committee, welcome aboard to our new member, Anna. And the next meeting, so what the committee is doing is it's a new committee. They're going from one municipal building to the next to meet with that department head and team to better understand their technology needs, where they're at today, and what kinds of ways in which technology can help them provide even greater service to our residents. And so they will be headed to the Public Works Building and Yard for their next session. So we look forward to seeing that crew there and understanding all of the cool things that can happen there. And they're continuing work on the social media and acceptable computer use policies as well. And finally, it was Dudley Moore who once said, the best car safety device is a rear view mirror with a cop in it. So let's hope that's not you. But please be aware that December is many things to many people, and it includes being the National Drunk and Drugged Driving Prevention Month. And so especially with the holiday festivities and things, please be smart, please plan ahead. We've talked in earlier items about the advancements in technology. If you find yourself in a need where you don't want to be one of these folks with those kind of blinky lights in your rearview mirror, please make appropriate decisions and reach out. There's things on your cell phone you can do to contact folks who will happily drive you for a few dollars to get you where you need to be. Be safe, take it easy out there. The first big snowfall is always crazy, so the last thing you need to do is put some kind of weird substance on top of all of that. So please be careful, enjoy safely, and don't have those blinky lights in your rearview mirror. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Dean.
I'd like to echo Councilmember Blanchard's sentiments about the Holiday Lights Parade. It was a really fun evening in spite of the rain and the freezing wind, but we had a great time, and I just want to thank them for all their hard work. Josephine Brewer mentioned in her remarks about all the love that she feels, and I would just like to say to Josephine, the love that you're feeling is your love being reflected back to you. You have poured your heart and soul into Berkeley, and we are a better community because of all that you've given. I've been a direct recipient of your kindness, and I will be forever grateful. So thank you. Thank you for being here, for all the work that you've done, and I've enjoyed my time on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board with you. So, and the best to you in the future. Merry Month, yes, to piggyback on that. If you are a knitter or crocheter, you can hang out at Have You Any Wool from 5 to 9 p.m. We're going to craft and have snacks. There will be no instruction. You can bring whatever beverage you would like, beverage of your choice. Everybody's welcome. Parks and Rec Advisory Board, there are vacation camps will be running December 26th, 27th, 28th, as well as January 2nd, and you can find out more about those and register either on the Parks and Rec website or you can call them. Class registrations for the new year are up and running, so also check them out on the website. And stay tuned for all the fun special events like dances, Winterfest, and more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hennon?
All right, thank you. The Environmental Committee, Chairperson Richardson, he met with the city manager and with EchoWorks, and they're starting work on the city's energy audit, and he's going to be assisting them with the project, acting as a liaison, and the results of that should spell out some concrete steps we can take towards energy-efficient capital improvements in the city. The committee's also going to be helping out with the multi-community planning process with Huntington Woods and Oak Park across 11 Mile Road and looking at green infrastructure ideas there. And at our last meeting, we had DDA Director Vivian Carmody there. She presented on the proposed design review board and some of the road diet ideas and answered a lot of the committee's questions. So both the Environmental Committee and the Tree Board are off for December, and we'll meet again in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gavin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to echo some of my colleagues, the Holiday Lights Parade was still a lot of fun, even despite the rain. My son might disagree, but a special shout out to Councilmember Dean, whose phone lasted a little bit longer than mine, so Mickey Mouse Clubhouse made it through the parade, so it's wonderful. And we also had our Coolidge Task Force is still looking for a date to meet in December, trying to nail that down. ZBA is not meeting. Of course, Planning Commission, most everything you saw was on our agenda tonight. For tonight, there was a little bit further discussion about the Design Review Board and also a postponement of a temporary land use application as well. And while Vice Chair Smith nobly offered to come in on Christmas Day for our normally scheduled meeting, there was consensus to move it to next Tuesday at 7:30. So that's when that Planning Commission will be. And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday with family and friends.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll stick with the theme and say that my family as well enjoyed the Holiday Lights Parade. My sons braved the cold, rainy weather. As long as people kept throwing candy at them, they would have stayed out there till all hours of the night as well. So I think thank you to whoever did that, but bedtime was particularly interesting that night. A beautiful parade runs on the back of volunteers, and you know, as has been said over and over and over again, I cannot say enough good things about people that put their heart and soul and particularly their time and energy into making sure that for a couple hours every year that we all enjoy ourselves. But it literally does take hours and hours and months to get to that point. So, but it's rewarding work, and anybody who's interested, that group is forever looking for new people to join them. Switching topics a little bit, we've had some rainy weather. That's my attempt at a segue to say that the Water Resource Commissioner's Office of Oakland County is getting together with their counterparts across 4 different other counties to try to get a handle on rewriting stormwater standards across Metro Detroit. I bring it up because the kickoff meeting for that for Oakland County is December 7th, Friday. Myself and I think Derek Schuler will also be attending that to weigh in on what our experiences here have been. And let them know that Berkley stands ready to help in any way possible. But we want to see some hard outcomes here and some new standards and ones that will benefit our community for, you know, however long it takes to rewrite these things again. So the Berkley will be well represented as we kick off and throughout that entire process. Do want to mention that the Chamber has their Explore Berkley gift cards or gift certificates. They check out the Chamber's website, go to any Chamber business for information on that. Great gift, great way to spread the Berkley holiday cheer, and it's a great way to support our local businesses. So anybody who's interested, again, head to the Chamber's website or head to any of the Chamber participants there. And last but not least, in relation to what we discussed earlier today, not only is McKenna in their short time here so far, helping us to remedy enforcement matters, but they've also started working on city's own stormwater standards and construction site standards as well. So we have been long pining to see some resolution on there. Again, we're finally building the team that we need to get some real action. So looking forward to bringing that to council, having a frank discussion on what we need to see here, what the city's expectations are, and then be ready and raring to go when the construction season opens back up and the weather breaks. So looking forward to good things. And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney.
Just one item, Mayor. Following up on the comments from the residents regarding the flooding on Royal, I will, and my office will be making sure that the city administration is made aware of the city code, specifically Chapter 78 regarding nuisance and nuisance abatement, and whether that might provide a mechanism, an additional tool for the city to consider with respect to addressing that issue.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a few comments just before we come up to our sunset deadline here. Should be in good shape. Too, want to thank the Cindy and Marcia and the entire parade committee for everything that they did despite the weather, making it a very successful, enjoyable evening for all. The Junior Women's Club too, the Berkley Junior Women's Club, for the tree lighting and the hospitality around the gazebo. And if it were not for Santa being the main event of this, I think that most folks would agree that the DPW stole the show.
Oh, for
and
sure.
continue
Definitely.
to steal the show. I mean, the DPW took anything literally that was mobile, fired lights on it, and had it driving all, and then the people, and believe me, they noticed. So DPW, we know you're the best at what you do from a public works perspective. You're also the best from entertaining and stringing lights to things that move. So outstanding. Really, it was awesome. Couple quick notes. One, as if you were here, you noticed, and you weren't here, you noticed because you probably would have been here. We did not take action on a second reading of an ordinance relating to opting out of retail marijuana right now. After our first meeting, council members received a number of questions, a number of emails asking, what about this, what about this, what about this, on both sides of the issue. And council, and after we talked with our attorney's office, there was not a pressing need for us to take action immediately. So what we are able to do now is to continue to do some more due diligence, projections, whatever projections we can get. Hope state regulations are coming forward. In an attempt so that when we do take this back up, we actually have as much information as possible to make an accurate decision on what we think is best for the city of Berkeley. Again, this is not something that we're trying to sneak or hide from anybody. We heard from a lot of residents. I think council hearing from residents and at least altering their course is an important role, is something that I think we all should do. So that's what we are doing right now until we have adequate information to make maybe a little more of an informed decision on what it might or might not look like for the city. Certainly in terms of potential financial impact, or not as much financial impact as has been widely bandied about. So I wanted to make that clear. I know the city put out a press release, but again, I got some questions on why we were trying to hide this from people. I promise you we are not. And lastly, in January, I plan on putting together a committee to look at the community center and new potential community center prospects for the future. One of the reasons that at this point I want to put the committee together, and again, this is not official yet, is because I mentioned last time that if we're going to do this, we need to do it the right way, and it shouldn't be a 50-49 or a 51-50 outcome. I don't see why that would be the case for something that's as important to the community as a community center. And I know that emotions got pretty high on either side of that issue, and some things can be forgiven. Time has a way of helping to heal some wounds. But if this is going to happen, I need people in a room who were about as far apart as they could possibly be to see if there's any way we can come to consensus on that. So I'm going to be doing that. I will be taking, if people want to apply for this, it's not going to be a huge board, but if people want to apply, that's great. But I do need to make sure that this is a board that has very different perspectives and desired outcomes, not only on the first project, but also if we can come to create some consensus on the first project. It's not just going to be a group of the supporters. It's not just going to be, a group of the folks that said no because of X, Y, Z. I want everyone to work together, and there's a lot of folks in between who kind of were on the fence, who are like, I don't know, maybe. I mean, at least 200 people didn't vote on that voted on the infrastructure millage. So why is that? There had to be a reason. So I'm going to look for a pretty diverse group of folks to at least start having the conversation, figure out exactly what went wrong, and if there is a way that we can come together to build consensus for something that is critically important, in my opinion at least, for our city moving forward. So that will be coming in January. Happy second night of Hanukkah. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Hennon with support from Councilmember Stedman. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. The December 3rd, 2018 meeting of the 37th Council has been adjourned, and now we're supposed to go take a picture?
Oh, yeah.